Soft rain brushes the rooftops, whispering you awake. The scent of bread rises through the quiet dawn. In the small bakery, warmth hums against the cool morning air. You move slowly, listening to the rhythm of water and dough. It is the beginning of a day made entirely of gentle sound and patience. The first thing you feel is the cool hush of rain. It slides against the windows like a secret being told only to you. The world outside has softened into watercolor streets, washed silver, air thick with the smell of wet stone and blooming leaves. The city seems to hold its breath between drops, and in that held breath, you rise from your bed. Your feet touch the floor. Wood creaks faintly, a familiar sound that blends with the steady percussion outside. You pull the curtain aside. Across the quiet lane, the sign of the bakery sways lightly, the painted letters blurred by drizzle. The morning sky is the color of unbaked dopel gray, with streaks of gold waiting underneath. You wrap a shawl around your shoulders and open the door. A cool sigh greets you, followed by the deep comfort of rain's rhythm. The bakery stands only a few steps away. You unlock it with a sound so small it could be mistaken for part of the rain itself. Inside, the air still holds last night's warmth, mixed with the faint trace of flour and yeast. You breathe in deeply. The smell is home earthy, patient, familiar. You move through the dim light and flip the switch. A soft amber glow spills over wooden counters dusted in white. Jars of sugar, bottles of syrup, baskets of granola shimmer quietly. Each object seems to wait for your touch, like instruments awaiting their musician. You roll your sleeves, tie your apron, and begin. The first batch of dough feels cool beneath your palms. It yields to pressure, stretching, folding, breathing. As you knead, the rhythm begins to match the rain outside. Push, fold, turn. Push, fold, turn. The dough becomes smoother, warmer, alive. Time melts away into this small, repeated act. You think of how life itself sometimes feels like needing pressing, shaping, waiting, trusting something unseen to rise. Steam curls from the kettle on the back counter. You pour yourself a cup of tea and rest for a moment beside the window. Droplets race each other down the glass. A child in a yellow raincoat splashes through a puddle, her laughter faint but clear. The sound tugs at a memory the first time you ever baked bread with your grandmother, her laughter rising above the hiss of the oven. You remember how she told you that good bread begins with listening. The dough tells you when it's ready, she had said. If you only stop to hear it, you take another sip, letting the warmth spread through your chest. The rain thickens outside, turning the street into rippling silver. Somewhere, a car passes slowly, leaving a wake of mist. The bakery hums with its quiet machinery ovens, preheating, dough resting, yeast breathing. You feel as though the whole building is alive, pulsing gently with its own slow heartbeat. You move back to the counter, dividing the dough into rounds. Each one is a small moon in your hands, soft and shining. You line them neatly in the trays and brush them with a whisper of oil. The scent of fermenting yeast drifts upward sweet, ancient, a promise of warmth to come. There is something sacred in this routine, something timeless. Bakers have stood like this for centuries, working before sunrise, guided only by feel and scent and faith in invisible transformations. You slide the first tray into the oven. The door closes with a satisfying click, and the timer begins to tick softly. You lean against the counter, listening to the quiet hiss of heat. The bakery fills with anticipation, like a held note waiting to resolve. You glance around the empty chairs, the counter where later you'll arrange pastries, the clock ticking above the door. Everything feels suspended between moments. The first wave of scent escapes the oven, a warm, golden perfume that floods the room. You close your eyes and breathe it in. This smell is both present and eternal. It belongs to every morning that ever began with bread. Outside, the rain eases into a drizzle, lighter, almost shy. Light filters through the clouds, turning each droplet on the window into a tiny mirror. You set out the freshly baked loaves, one by one. Their crusts crackle faintly as they cool, releasing small puffs of steam. You smile without realizing it. There's something profoundly human in creating warmth from cold, nourishment from patience. Each loaf is a quiet triumph, a reminder that even the smallest acts can carry a kind of grace. Soon, the first customer appears, a man in a long coat, umbrella dripping at the door. You greet him softly, the sound of your voice mingling with the chime of the bell. He orders 2 rolls and a coffee, his words hushed as if not to disturb the rain. You hand him the warm paper bag, and for a brief moment your eyes meet strangers sharing the same small warmth in a grey morning. He thanks you and disappears back into the mist. One by one, others come. A woman with tired eyes and paint on her hands. A boy with a sketchbook. A postman who hums quietly as he counts his coins. The bakery fills with murmurs and the rustle of raincoats, then empties again, returning to stillness. Between each visit, you return to your slow work, rolling, shaping, brushing, baking. The rhythm becomes meditative, like breathing. By noon, the rain has settled into a soft, steady song. You sit again by the window, the light now warmer, the street outside shimmering with reflection. Every puddle holds a different world, clouds floating upside down, lampposts bending in the water. You imagine the whole town existing twice, once in the sky, once in the puddles. The thought makes you smile. You wonder if, perhaps, that's how memories work, echoes of moments reflected somewhere. Unseen. You think about the people who will eat the bread you made today. Maybe a child will hold a warm roll in her hands on the walk home. Maybe an old man will dip a crust into soup and remember his wife's laughter. Maybe someone will bite into a sweet pastry and, just for a heartbeat, forget their loneliness. You realize that baking is not just about food. It's about sending quiet comfort into the world. One loaf at a time. The clock ticks softly, marking the slow passage of hours. You tidy the counter, sweep the floor, and set the next batch to rise. The air hums with warmth, and you find yourself growing drowsy in the golden quiet. You rest your head on folded arms, listening to the steady rain. The sound feels endless, circular, ancient like time itself, breathing in sleep. In the drifting edge of your thoughts, you remember the stories your grandmother used to tell during long, rainy days. She said rain was the earth's way of remembering its oceans, that every drop had once been part of something vast, and every return to the sea was a kind of reunion. You think about that now, how every act of creation, even a loaf of bread, might be a way of remembering wholeness. You stir as the timer rings softly. The next batch is ready. You rise, stretch, and open the oven door. Heat rolls out, wrapping you in a golden embrace. The sight of new bread, fresh, alive, glowing, fills you with a quiet gratitude. You brush each loaf with melted butter, watching it shine in the dim light. Outside, the rain begins to fade, leaving behind a mist that clings to the cobblestones. You step outside for a moment, holding a cup of tea, breathing in the cool scent of rain and bread. The world feels clean, renewed. Drops glisten on the window ledges, and a faint rainbow trembles in the distance. The sound of your heartbeat blends with the last few falling drops. The day has only begun, but it already feels full. And somewhere inside you, beneath the simple rhythm of baking and breathing, something quietly opens a recognition that every storm carries the seed of stillness, that every rain-soaked morning begins with an invitation to slow down, to listen, to create warmth where the world feels cold. You watch the mist drift through the narrow street and disappear into the distance. The smell of bread follows it, a whisper carried on the wind, and you know, as you turn back toward the soft light of the bakery, that tomorrow will begin the same way, with rain, with patience, and with the quiet wonder of something ordinary made beautiful. The kettle hums again behind you. You pour one last cup and listen as the rain, faint now, begins to speak its final words against the window. You stand there, in that small moment between sound and silence, between warmth and air, and let yourself breathe. And somewhere in that stillness, you begin to sense the next story forming, a story carried on the scent of sugar. A story that begins not with rain, but with the memory of sunlight filtering through flour, dust. The morning unfolds slowly, like a soft exhale after a long dream. You wake to the gentle rhythm of rain against the window, not the loud kind that hammers rooftops, but a fine drizzle that speaks in whispers. It's the kind of rain that turns the whole world into watercolor, where edges blur, colors soften, and everything feels wrapped in a sigh. You sit up in bed, rubbing the sleep from your eyes, and the faint scent of something sweet drifts in from the kitchen. Sugar, butter, maybe cinnamon. It's a scent that feels like memory. You pull on your sweater, the one that smells faintly of vanilla and rain, and wander toward the kitchen. The floorboards creak under your bare feet. The air feels cool against your skin, a soft contrast to the warmth waiting just beyond the doorway. And there it is, the small, golden-lit bakery that you call your world. A wooden counter lined with bowls and spoons, a half-open window that lets the rain's perfume wander in, and the hum of the oven filling the silence like a quiet song. Outside, puddles reflect the grey sky, but inside everything glows. You begin the day's ritual, the first act of every rainy morning. Warming milk. You pour it into a small pot, watching the thin layer of steam rise and curl. You listen the hiss of the stove, the soft drip from the roof, the beating of your own quiet heart. The rain and the kitchen have their own rhythm, and you find yourself swaying gently to it, as though time itself has slowed to your pace. You reach for flour, the bag puffing out a little cloud of white as you open it. It lands on your fingers like soft snow. You sift it slowly, watching it fall, a lazy waterfall of dust in the golden morning light. Every movement feels sacred in its slowness. You mix in sugar, then eggs, then butter, the world's simplest magic, and the scent begins to bloom again. The bakery smells like comfort as the dough forms under your hands. You can't help but feel that baking is its own kind of meditation. The kneading, the waiting, the small transformations, they remind you of something deeply human. You press your palms into the dough, folding and turning, feeling it come alive. The warmth of your hands meets the cool softness of flour, and the moment feels timeless. Outside, the rain keeps singing. When you open the oven door, the glow inside feels like sunrise. The scent that escapes fills the entire room. sweet, buttery, golden. It smells like sugar melting in sunlight, even though the sky outside remains grey. You close your eyes for a second and let it carry you somewhere else, a memory, maybe, or just a dream. You remember the first time you baked something on a rainy day. It was years ago, when you were smaller, and the world felt impossibly large. You'd stood on a stool by the counter, watching your grandmother whisk eggs with slow, circular motions. The secret, she had said in a voice that sounded like warm tea, is to never rush sweetness. You remember the smell, sugar caramelizing in the air, the faint bitterness of coffee brewing nearby, and the low hum of rain on the roof. That scent became something you carried with you, even long after the stool, the house, and her soft voice were gone. Today, as you bake, you feel her presence again, not as a ghost, but as a quiet warmth behind your ribs. The pastries rise, golden and gentle, their tops cracking slightly under the oven's breath. You open the door just enough to peek inside, and the wave of warm, sweet air greets you like a friend. There's no rush, no noise, only the slow passage of time and the pleasure of small creation. You place each pastry carefully onto the counter to cool, and the sound they make as they settle, a faint sigh, feels alive. You pour yourself a cup of tea. The steam rises, curling and fading in the morning light, and you sit by the window. The rain hasn't stopped. It never really does in this part of town, but it's softer now, more of a hum than a fall. The street outside glows wet and empty, lamplight reflecting in puddles like golden coins. You take a sip of tea, its warmth slipping down your throat, and you watch the droplets race each other down the glass. Somewhere in the distance, a bell chimes. The sound reaches you like an echo from another life. Your mind drifts as you eat your first pastry. It's flaky and sweet, buttery and warm, the kind of flavor that tastes like a feeling. You think of how strange it is that something so small, flour, eggs, heat, can turn into this quiet joy. How science and love can meet in the oven and create something so purely human. Each bite is soft, dissolving like a sigh. You close your eyes and listen again to the rhythm of rain, the heartbeat of the bakery, the low hum of the city beyond. Hours pass this way, though they feel like minutes. The clock ticks softly, the rain keeps breathing, and you remain in the stillness between both. The scent of sugar and sunlight lingers, filling every corner, clinging to your skin, your clothes, your thoughts. Later, when the pastries cool, you begin arranging them on the display. Each one becomes part of a quiet mosaic, a story told in layers of dough and glaze. You drizzle honey over the tops, the golden strands catching the light like threads of warmth. It's an act of care for yourself, for anyone who might wander in, because someone always does. A customer appears, a stranger wrapped in a raincoat, eyes bright despite the grey morning. You greet them softly, your voice blending with the rain's whisper. They smile, glance at the pastries, and say, "It smells like childhood in here." You both laugh quietly, the sound mingling with the scent and the drizzle outside. You serve them tea, wrap a pastry in parchment, and watch as they take the first bite. There's a silence afterward, a silence that isn't empty, but full of gratitude. It's in that silence that you realize the bakery is more than a shop. It's a shelter for moments like this, small, fragile, human moments that make the rain outside feel like music. When they leave, the bell over the door jingles softly, and you're alone again. But it doesn't feel lonely. The scent remains. The light remains. The warmth remains. You sit back at your table by the window, the empty teacup beside you, and you let your eyes wander toward the horizon. Somewhere beyond the rain, you imagine sunlight, not bright or sharp, but soft, the way it appears in dreams. You think about how sunlight and sugar are connected in a way both are energy made sweet. Both are things that make life grow. Both are, in their own language, love. The day drifts forward. Afternoon light slides gently across the counter. The rain lightens, becoming a fine mist that blurs everything beyond the glass. You feel the quiet in your bones, that peaceful kind of quiet that doesn't ask for anything, doesn't demand, just exists. You stand, stretch, and wipe a bit of flour from your sleeve. The smell of sugar and sunlight still clings to the air, soft as memory, warm as breath, and then a sound. A distant thunder roll, low and lingering. The rain thickens again, as though the sky has decided it isn't done singing. You smile, because the bakery feels even cozier now, the walls glowing with amber light against the grey outside. You light a candle on the counter just because it feels right, and the small flame flickers like a heartbeat. You hum softly as you begin another batch of dough. There's a rhythm to it, the pressing, the folding, the turning. It's as if your hands know a song that your mind doesn't, and with every movement, every quiet breath, you feel something settle inside you, peace. Maybe as night begins to lean into the horizon, the bakery glows like a lantern in the rain. You hang your apron on the hook by the door, the soft sound of fabric brushing wood. You take one last look around the cooling pastries, the flickering candle, the misty window, and you breathe it all in. The sugar, the rain, the warmth. Everything feels still. You turn off the light, step into the drizzle, and close the door behind you. The rain kisses your hair. The air smells like wet earth and sweetness, and you walk slowly through the quiet street. The glow of the bakery lingers behind you like a dream, and as you make your way home through the sleepy city, you can still taste the sugar and sunlight on your tongue, that small, simple magic that makes even the rain feel alive. The smell fades into memory, and somewhere in that silence, you sense a new story rising, one not made of sugar, but of sound. The next morning greets you with a grey stillness, the kind that seems to linger between breaths. The rain has softened overnight into a slow, steady mist, wrapping the town in a gentle silence. Everything feels hushed, as though the world itself has pulled a warm blanket over its shoulders. You wake slowly, your body heavy but your thoughts light. Suspended somewhere between dream and waking, you sit on the edge of the bed for a moment, listening. Somewhere below, the pipes hum faintly, and from outside, the rhythmic patter of rain sings against the window pane. The air carries a faint chill, the kind that makes you want to curl up with warmth, both real and imagined, and then you hear it, the first whistle of the kettle. It's not loud. It's a soft, rising sound, almost shy at first, but it carries through the quiet house like a voice calling you home. You smile without realizing it. There's something ancient about that sound, something that reaches beyond the kitchen, beyond this day. It's a reminder that heat, sound, and life are all just different ways the universe hums to itself. You rise, wrap a shawl around your shoulders, and make your way to the kitchen. The light filtering in through the window is the soft color of rain clouds, silvery, muted, calm. The kettle sits on the stove, trembling slightly, its whistle swelling as the steam builds inside. You watch as it dances, a tiny storm in a small metal world, Steam escapes in thin, ghostly ribbons, twisting upward, vanishing into the air. You reach out, turn off the flame, and lift the kettle carefully. The whistle fades, but its echo lingers not just in the air, but in your chest. You pour the water into your favorite cup, the one chipped at the rim, but still holding years of quiet mornings. The tea leaves swirl and settle like galaxies forming in miniature. You watch them move, their tiny spirals turning the clear water into color. And you think about how all motion, even this small, gentle one, carries the signature of time. As you sit by the window with your tea, the rain becomes a steady song. It taps against the glass, trickles down the roof, runs along the gutters. Everything outside shimmers with that wet, silvery glow that only rain can create. The street is empty except for the occasional ripple of someone's umbrella passing by. You take a sip, warmth against the chill, taste against the quiet. It's strange how a simple act, boiling water, listening to a whistle, can feel so full of life. The kettle is not just metal and steam. It's transformation itself. Water becomes vapor, sound becomes feeling, and somewhere in between, you find peace. You remember reading once that the whistle of a kettle is born from turbulence, air rushing through a narrow space, colliding with its own echo, creating tone from chaos. It's a miniature storm that sings. The same physics that shapes the whistle also forms the voices of the wind, the cry of distant stars, even the breath moving through your lungs. The thought makes you smile. The universe, it seems, loves to hum. You imagine that perhaps every sound, every whisper, every note is just energy trying to be heard. The rain's patter, the kettle's sigh, the beating of your own heart, all threads in the same quiet fabric of existence. The bakery waits for you. You finish your tea slowly, savoring each sip as though it's a meditation. When you finally rise, you move with the unhurried rhythm of the morning. You slip on your boots, wrap a scarf around your neck, and step outside. The air greets you, cool and damp. The rain kisses your face. Every droplet feels deliberate, like the world reminding you that even stillness has texture. The path to the bakery glistens. Puddles hold soft reflections of the overcast sky. You walk slowly, each footstep merging with the sound of water meeting stone. The air smells faintly of earth and distant coffee. When you arrive, you unlock the door and enter the warmth within. The bakery breathes around you, familiar, alive. You light the oven, and the low hum of the flame fills the space. Soon the air will carry that same golden scent, sugar, flour, warmth, but for now it's the soft whistle of the kettle again that fills the silence. You set it on the stove, waiting for the sound to rise. While you wait, you prepare the dough. Each motion is steady, intentional, flour falling like slow snow, eggs breaking with quiet precision. The rhythm is meditative. The dough presses back against your palms, reminding you of presence, the tactile proof of now. Outside, the rain continues. The kettle begins to hum again. The tone rises, gentle and sure, until the sound fills the entire room. You pause, close your eyes, and listen. It feels like the bakery is breathing. You can almost imagine the walls expanding and contracting, the air shimmering with invisible energy. Somewhere in the back of your mind, you remember how sound moves, waves rippling through air, vibrating molecules, setting them dancing in patterns too fast to see. Every sound is motion turned into touch, an invisible hand brushing through space. And in that moment, you realize something quietly beautiful. Sound doesn't just travel, it connects. Each wave, each vibration is a message from one point of existence to another. The kettle's whistle to your ear, the rain's rhythm to the window, your heartbeat to your skin. Everything speaks. If you listen slowly enough, you pour the water once more. Steam rising like a veil between you and the grey morning light. As the cup fills, so does something inside you. Not emotion, exactly, but awareness. A sense that even the smallest acts carry meaning. Later, as the pastries begin to bake, you find yourself humming along with the kettle's memory. It's not a song you recognize, but something your hands seem to remember. The sound weaves into the rhythm of rain, forming a melody so soft that you can't tell where one ends and the other begins. Time moves gently. The doorbell jingles, a soft chime in the quiet space. You look up to see a familiar face, the same customer from yesterday. Raincoat glistening, smile shy but warm. Back again, they say, voice like honey stirred into tea. You nod, pouring them a cup without needing to ask. The whistle fades, the rain softens, and the two of you sit in silence, sharing warmth. The air smells of pastries and steam, of sugar and quiet laughter. They tell you, between sips, that the sound of the kettle reminds them of home, of mornings long gone and people now only in memory. You listen, not to respond, but to understand. The rain becomes a gentle percussion to their story. When they leave, the silence feels different. Not emptier, just fuller, softer. You pour one last cup for yourself and sit by the window again. The rain continues its endless, slow descent. You hold the warm cup between your hands and close your eyes. The kettle sits silent now, but you can still hear it in the memory of its whistle, in the rhythm of your breath. You think about how every sound, once released, never truly disappears. It travels outward, dissolving into the air, rippling through space until it becomes part of something larger, the quiet fabric of the universe itself. And perhaps, you think, the sound of this morning, the whistle, the rain, your heartbeat will drift out there too, joining the hum of distant stars. You take another sip of tea. The warmth feels like a promise that even the simplest sounds hold stories, that somewhere beyond the rain, the universe is listening back. The light fades slowly. The day exhales. You begin closing the bakery, one soft motion at a time. The counter wiped, the cups washed, the last crumb brushed away. The quiet grows deeper, the rain steadier. You light a candle before you go. Its flame dances softly in the dimness, and for a moment it looks like the kettle's song turned to light. You watch it flicker, and something in you flickers to calm, bright, alive. When you finally step outside, the air greets you with its cool embrace. The rain still falls, but now it feels like a melody, endless, tender, forgiving. You walk home under your umbrella, and the sound of the rain becomes a lullaby. As you reach your door, you glance back toward the bakery, its windows faintly glowing through the mist. You can almost hear the echo of the kettle's whistle, distant but warm, a soft note that seems to linger not in the air, but in your chest. You smile, because the rain, the sound, and the warmth all belong to the same song, one that began long before you and will continue long after. And as you step inside, drying your hands, you realize that tomorrow, when the kettle sings again, you'll listen not just with your ears, but with your whole being. The sound fades. The steam drifts upward, and in the quiet between raindrops, You begin to wonder, what if warmth could speak through touch? You stand behind the counter again, the morning still soft with the weight of rain. The droplets trace quiet rivers down the glass, and the sound of them feels like a whisper from another world. Inside, the bakery is warm, a steady hum of gentle energy. The kind that doesn't rush or demand, but simply is. The ovens breathe in cycles. You can hear them, soft sighs of heat, the patient rhythm of fire working through dough. The air smells of butter and rising yeast, the kind of scent that makes time slow down. You place your hands on the wooden counter, its surface smooth and slightly warm, and realize how much of baking is done not by thought, but by touch. Your hands, covered in flour dust, become storytellers. Every movement carries memory, kneading, folding, shaping each one a silent language passed through generations. You remember how your grandmother used to bake by instinct. She never measured much. "You'll feel it," she would say, guiding your fingers through a bowl of flour. The dough tells you when it's ready. And it does. Even now, as you knead, the dough begins to speak, a quiet resistance, a gentle elasticity that answers back. The act is not mechanical, but musical. You press, fold, turn, breathe. It's as if your hands know something your mind forgets, that creation is a conversation. The rain outside thickens, turning into a silver curtain. The sound deepens, and for a moment, you let your rhythm fall into sync with the storm. Knead, fold, breathe. A flash of light ripples across the wet street outside, and you catch your reflection in the window, soft, tired, but peaceful. Behind you, the hum of the ovens continues. A faint golden glow slips along the floor, touching the flour scattered like pale dust stars. You think of how warmth moves unseen, like kindness passed from one hand to another. The bread will soon rise, not because of heat alone, but because of patience. Patience is its own language. You've learnt it here, in the quiet hours when the world is still asleep. It takes time for the dough to rest. It takes time for it to grow. There is no rushing something that depends on air and warmth and faith. You smile faintly, thinking maybe life isn't so different. As the loaves rise, you sit on the old stool by the window. Steam fogs the glass. You draw a simple heart in it with your fingertip, then wipe it away. Outside, the rain slows to a soft drizzle. The street shines, reflecting lanterns and faint yellow light from the bakery sign. It feels like the world itself has exhaled. Someone enters, the little bell rings. A woman with wet hair and an umbrella dripping near the door. She smiles, that kind of tired smile you recognize instantly. "Smells heavenly," she says. You nod, offering her a seat by the window. "The bread's almost ready," you tell her. A few more minutes. She sits quietly, wrapping her hands around a mug of tea you bring her. The steam curls upward, tracing invisible paths. There's something comforting about shared silence. No need for words, just the small, human warmth between two strangers waiting for bread. You notice her hands, the way she holds the cup gently, as if afraid it might vanish. You think of how hands hold so many stories, work, tenderness, loss. Yours are dusted in flour. Hers are trembling slightly. Two stories meeting in a quiet room while the rain continues its song. You turn to check the loaves. They've browned at the edges, rising tall and full. The scent deepens, a warm golden heartbeat in the air. You take them out carefully, the sound of the crust cracking softly under your fingers. Steam escapes, ghost-like. The woman inhales. That smell, she whispers. It reminds me of my childhood. You smile. Bread always remembers, you say, without thinking. She looks at you for a long moment, then nods, as if she understands something that doesn't need to be said when she leaves. She takes a loaf with her, wrapped in paper. You watch her disappear into the mist, umbrella tilted, steps slow. A trail of tiny footprints dissolves behind her. You stand for a while longer, watching the door. Then, slowly, you return to the counter. There are crumbs left where she sat, a few drops of tea on the table. You brush them away gently. The bakery hums softly again, like it's breathing with you. You begin another batch. New dough, new air, the same rhythm. Your hands move without thought. Press, fold, turn, breathe. Every motion is part of something timeless. Something that has existed since fire and hunger first met. There's a strange peace in repetition. The same actions again and again, yet never the same loaf twice. You think about how this mirrors everything. How stars burn, fade, and are reborn. How rivers flow, but never carry the same water twice. The universe is a kitchen of endless creation, and every atom dances to a recipe older than memory. As you work, the clock ticks softly. The rain outside becomes a hush. The city beyond fades into silence. In this moment, it feels as though you're kneading not just bread, but the fabric of time, folding warmth into something the world can hold. You press your palms flat one last time, feeling the dough rise beneath them, alive, breathing. You realize, quietly, that this is what your grandmother meant. The dough really does speak. It speaks through your hands, your patience, your warmth, and you understand something else, that creation, whether of bread or love or understanding, is not about control. It's about listening. You glance outside. The sky is deep blue now, nearly black, with one faint star barely visible through thinning clouds. The air feels clean. You whisper softly, to no one and everyone. We all rise in our own time, and as the bakery fills again with the soft scent of new beginnings, you close your eyes, letting the warmth rest in your hands, the quiet language that never needs words. The morning has softened into a silver hush. The rain outside no longer falls in a steady pour, it drifts, like silk threads loosened from a cloud. Each droplet that lands on the bakery window makes a sound that belongs somewhere between music and memory. Inside, the air hums with a slow warmth, carrying the scent of sugar, yeast, and roasted coffee beans, quiet alchemy that feels almost sacred. You stand near the counter, watching the steam curl upward from a tray of freshly baked loaves. The glass fogs slightly, blurring the shapes beyond into a gentle watercolor of motion and light. There is something mesmerizing about it, the way warmth breathes into the air. How each swirl of steam rises as if it has a story of its own. Every loaf has a rhythm, a pulse that mirrors your own heartbeat. You exhale, and for a moment your breath joins the mist. The rain hums softly, like a lullaby meant for the earth. The street outside glows faintly, a mirror of scattered light from lamps and puddles. A few umbrellas drift past small dots of color against the gray. You think of how every person out there has their own rain, their own warmth waiting somewhere behind a door. And here, in this quiet bakery, you are surrounded by both a hush of water and the comfort of fire. The oven murmurs in the background. The timer ticks, steady and sure, marking time not as something to lose, but as something to rest within. You lean against the wooden counter and listen to the dough expand in the heat. tiny sighs escaping like whispers between notes of an invisible song. This is the symphony of steam and rain, the world's softest orchestra, where nothing rushes and everything breathes. The baker, an elderly man with flour dusting his hair like frost, moves slowly between the ovens. His hands are patient, deliberate, kind. Every movement seems to belong to a ritual older than memory. He doesn't speak much, but you can feel the conversation in the way he folds the dough, the way he pauses to watch the window, the way he listens to the weather as if it's a friend telling him something important. He turns to you and smiles faintly. "Perfect morning for rising dough," he says, voice low and melodic. You nod, your voice softened by the stillness. "It feels alive in here." He chuckles gently. Everything is alive when the rain comes. Even the bread listens. You let those words linger. You can almost feel it, the way the dough responds to the rhythm of rain, how the air itself seems to cradle every living thing. The room becomes a small universe, held together by warmth and breath. You close your eyes. The sounds gather around you. The drip of rain, the low hum of the oven, the soft rustle of the baker's apron. They weave together, forming a slow-moving song that rocks the body into calmness. It feels ancient, like something born before language, a lullaby made of water and heat. In this moment, you remember how everything in the universe moves like this, not in sharp lines, but in waves. Steam rising, rain falling, breath flowing. A cycle of transformation that never ends, never hurries. Science calls it thermodynamics, the dance between warmth and coolness, between energy and rest. But here, it feels simpler. It feels like kindness. You picture molecules moving slowly in the air, tiny invisible dancers swirling in gentle spirals. The heat of the oven sends them upward, while the cool air from outside invites them to rest. The difference between them creates the very mist you see. You watch as it curls and vanishes, only to form again, over and over, as if the universe itself is breathing through the bakery. And perhaps it is. The baker slides open the oven door. A golden light spills out, soft as dawn. For a second, it glows against the grey morning like the inside of a sun. The scent that follows is deep and sweet, carrying with it a sense of belonging. You can taste it before you even take a bite, a blend of warmth and waiting. He places a loaf on the counter before you. The crust crackles faintly, whispering its own tiny applause. "Listen," he says again. "That's the sound of life leaving the fire." You tilt your ear closer. The bread speaks in miniature pops and sighs, steam escaping through invisible fissures. It's like hearing a language you once knew in a dream. The sound reminds you of childhood, of the first time you watched raindrops race down a window pane and wondered where they went. The baker turns away, giving you the space to simply be. And so, you sit by the window with your slice of bread and a cup of coffee, the warmth seeping through your palms. The rain outside grows softer still, falling like slow notes of a piano played underwater. Each droplet becomes a tiny metronome for your thoughts, steady, tender, timeless. You take a bite. The bread melts against your tongue, buttery and full of quiet sweetness. It reminds you of something that cannot be named, only felt the comfort of being small within something infinite. Outside, a bird flutters through the drizzle, its wings leaving ripples in the air. You wonder how something so fragile can move so freely through the storm. The baker once said that birds and bread share a secret. They both rise from warmth and air, both carried by something unseen. You smile at that thought, tracing the rim of your cup with your finger. Steam rises again, meeting the fogged window where the world blurs into watercolor. Beyond it, the rain continues its endless, forgiving rhythm. A young couple enters the bakery, dripping from the rain. Their laughter fills the space like sudden sunlight. They order pastries, exchange coins, and leave behind footprints that glisten on the floor. For a moment, their energy stirs the air, but soon the stillness returns, like a blanket being tucked back in. The baker hums softly as he works. The tune is old, familiar, and a little wistful. You realize it's the same melody the rain has been playing all morning. A conversation between man and weather, between earth and air. You think about how science explains such patterns: frequency, resonance, vibration. Yet, beyond the explanation, there's something more, a harmony that feels emotional, almost sentient. Maybe this is what the universe does. It listens to itself through every sound we make. As the day drifts onward, the rain begins to fade. Light filters through the thinning clouds, soft and muted, painting the bakery in hues of gold and pearl. The walls seem to glow with a tired happiness. You watch as the baker closes the oven for the last batch. He wipes his hands on his apron, exhales, and gazes out the window. "It's clearing," he murmurs. You nod. "But I kind of wish it wouldn't." He laughs softly. Rain reminds us to rest. Sunshine reminds us to begin again. You let the words settle. They feel like a lesson disguised as weather. The sound of a passing car splashes through a puddle outside, sending ripples across the reflection of the sky. You think of how even that small motion changes everything: the molecules, the air, the light. Science says there's no stillness in the universe. Even when you rest, the atoms within you are dancing. But here, in this warm, sleepy bakery, that dance feels more like a slow waltz. You glance again at the steam lifting from your cup. It rises like a spirit, graceful, fleeting, beautiful. You follow it with your eyes until it disappears into the air, merging with the invisible everything. You realize, once to rise, the bread, the steam, the sound of rain. Even your thoughts, they all reach gently upward before dissolving into something larger than themselves. Perhaps that's what peace truly is, the moment you stop clinging to form and allow yourself to become part of the air. The baker begins cleaning the counters. His movements are slow, deliberate, almost meditative. Each motion feels like punctuation at the end of a long, soft sentence. You join him in silence, wiping the last traces of flour, stacking cups, aligning spoons. The rain outside now is only a whisper, like someone speaking in their sleep. And in that quiet, something inside you stirs a gentle awareness that this moment, ordinary as it is, holds the entire universe within it. The laws of thermodynamics, the beauty of chemistry, the physics of sound, they're all here, woven through the rising of bread and the falling of rain. Nothing is separate. Everything is part of the same slow miracle. The baker extinguishes the last light in the oven. The glow fades, leaving behind a faint warmth that lingers in the air like memory. You both stand by the window, watching as a thin beam of pale sunlight breaks through the clouds, touching the wet cobblestones outside. The world looks washed clean, like a fresh canvas. You sip the last of your coffee and feel its fading warmth spread through your chest. The rain begins to stop entirely, but the sound remains, a phantom rhythm echoing in your mind. You close your eyes, hearing it as if from far away, drip, breath, heartbeat. Then, quietly, you understand the rain was never outside. It was always within you, part of your own pulse, your own cycle of rest and renewal. You take a deep breath. The steam from your cup mingles with that breath, becoming part of the room, part of the world. The baker smiles at you, says nothing, and opens the door. A cool breeze slips in, scented with wet earth and beginnings. You step outside. The puddles shimmer with fragments of sky. The sound of distant thunder hums like a closing chord. You glance back through the window one last time. The empty bakery, the soft light, the trace of steam rising from the counter end. You feel an ache that is both sadness and peace. The rain has stopped, but its song remains within you, and somewhere beyond the clouds, unseen but always listening. The universe hums in harmony, waiting to carry that melody into the next story, the next dawn, the next rising loaf of bread. The rain has gone, but its memory lingers. Outside, the air glows faintly with the aftertaste of water and light. Inside the bakery, everything feels newly born. The counters glisten softly. The wooden shelves sigh as if they've been waiting all morning to exhale. The scent in the air has changed. Sweeter now, warmer, layered with caramel and quiet dreams. You stand by the window again, tracing a finger through the last remnants of mist on the glass. Beyond it, the street hums with faint echoes, car wheels brushing puddles, shoes tapping over wet stone. The storm has washed the world into stillness. Even time itself seems to have slowed, as though the universe has taken a deep breath and chosen to hold it a little longer. The baker has begun his next ritual. You watch him weigh sugar, grains falling like golden dust through his fingers. Each crystal catches the morning light, scattering it into invisible rainbows. He moves without hurry, the same way planets orbit or tides turn steadily, inevitably. The rhythm of his hands mirrors the quiet pulse of time itself. He looks up, eyes soft beneath flower-dusted brows. Patience, he says simply, is the secret ingredient. You smile. You've heard him say this before, but today the words feel different, heavier, sweeter. There's truth baked into them, like sugar hidden inside dough, as he stirs. The spoon circles the bowl in slow, deliberate motions. You listen to the sound it makes, soft, hypnotic, like a clock that has forgotten how to rush. The mixture thickens, gold meeting white, past meeting present. You realize that sugar is more than sweetness. Sit is memory crystallized. Every grain carries sunlight, rainwater, and time. It was once part of a green stalk bending under tropical skies, drinking light to build sweetness from air. Now, that same sunlight glimmers in his bowl. The baker hums under his breath, a tune as old as comfort. You sit quietly, watching him fold the batter, his movements careful as though he's stirring a dream into being. Outside, a gentle wind begins to move through the wet leaves, whispering the faint rhythm of time resuming its flow. You find yourself thinking about how the body holds time, how every breath is a quiet clock, each heartbeat is a tick, each sigh a talk. Science calls it the circadian rhythm, the hidden metronome that guides your sleep, your hunger, your moods. But it feels deeper than that. It feels like your entire being is built from invisible spirals of rhythm. The pulse of your veins, the rise and fall of your chest, the stretch of moments between one thought and another. In the bakery, these rhythms align. The ticking of the clock above the door, the faint hiss of the oven, the slow dripping of a spoon, everything moves together, forming an unseen symphony of time and sweetness. The baker begins to pour the mixture into small tins. You watch the liquid gold settle, the surface trembling slightly before finding stillness. There's something profoundly peaceful in that pause, the moment before heat transforms everything. You ask softly, "How do you know when it's ready?" He tilts his head. You don't. You just listen. Sugar tells you. Time tells you. He slides the tins into the oven. The door closes with a sound like a whisper, like the beginning of a dream. And just like that, the air shifts again. A hum rises, a blend of warmth and anticipation. The smell that follows is slow and alive, unfolding in layers that fill the room. Butter melting into gold, sugar caramelizing, time turning to flavor. You close your eyes and let the scent move through you. It's astonishing how smell can carry emotion, how a single breath can open entire rooms inside your memory. You see childhood kitchens, the hands of someone long gone, sunlight falling on a table. You feel the weight of nostalgia and the lightness of joy all at once. You open your eyes again. The baker has stepped aside, resting on his stool, his gaze far away. For a moment, you realize that he's not just baking, he's remembering too. Every act of making is also an act of keeping something alive. On the shelf beside you, a jar of honey glows like a captured sunrise. Its surface catches the light in ripples, tiny galaxies swirling within amber. You pick it up, tilting it slightly, watching how slow the golden liquid moves time in syrup form. It reminds you of how scientists describe viscosity, a measure of resistance to flow. The slower it moves, the more it resists. But here, that slowness feels like grace. Honey does not rush. Neither should you. You dip a spoon and taste it. The flavor blooms, slowly, wildflowers, sun, a touch of something earthy. The sweetness spreads, but it's never sharp. It's rounded, patient, like a thought that unfolds with care. You think about the bees that made it, their small wings working tirelessly across fields, their rhythm of labor echoing across centuries. Every drop of honey is a map of time and place, a liquid memory of flowers that once bloomed, winds that once passed, days that once existed. You set the jar down, humbled by its quiet wisdom. The baker glances at you with a knowing smile. The world is full of sweetness, he says. You just have to slow down enough to taste it. You nod. Slow down. That's what the rain tried to teach, what the oven hums even now. The entire bakery feels like a meditation in motion, a small universe turning at its own pace, guided by sugar, time, and care. Minutes soar, maybe hours pass without definition. The light shifts softly across the room. When the oven chimes, the sound feels less like an alarm and more like a bell calling you back from a trance. The baker opens the door, and the world fills again with golden breath. He pulls out the tins, now transformed, and places them on the counter. The cakes rise like small suns, their tops glistening with caramelized sheen. You watch the steam curl from their surfaces, ghostly and elegant. It drifts upward, tracing invisible threads that catch the light before dissolving into air. You realize that everything beautiful eventually fades, but not before it leaves warmth behind. He taps one lightly, and it gives a soft, hollow sound. Perfect, he murmurs. They've learned how to breathe. You smile, unsure if he's joking or speaking a kind of truth that doesn't need logic. Either way, it feels right. He cuts a small piece, places it before you. Taste the hours, he says. You take a bite. The sweetness is balanced, not cloying, a whisper, not a shout. It melts gently, filling your senses with something beyond flavor. You taste patience. You taste sunlight stored in sugar. You taste time itself, softened by care. You sit in silence for a long while, both of you simply existing in the space between scent and sound. The baker leans back, his eyes half closed, as though he too is listening to something beyond the world. The ticking clock continues, unhurried. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell tolls. The sound carries through the damp air, its low tone wrapping around the bakery like silk. It reminds you that the day is moving forward, even if it doesn't feel that way. And yet, within this little room, time behaves differently. It stretches, folds, curls around moments like smoke. Science would call it perception, how the brain slows down when it's at peace, how the heartbeat steadies, how neural patterns shift when attention turns inward. But here, it feels like the world itself has softened, choosing to move in step with your breath. You look at the baker again. His hands rest still on the counter, palms open, like someone who has given everything and now asks for nothing. You realize that in a way, he's been teaching you about more than baking. He's been showing you how to live, how to let things rise, how to wait for sweetness, how to listen when silence speaks. The smell of sugar still lingers, faint but persistent, like the last note of a song refusing to fade. You take another slow breath, tasting it in the air. Will you bake again tomorrow? You ask softly. He nods. Every day. Time doesn't stop, but it repeats kindly. His words echo in you. Time repeats kindly. The phrase feels like a small secret one that explains why mornings always return, why rain always finds its way back to windows, why sweetness never truly leaves the world. You glance out the window once more. The street shines in soft gold. Children walk home with pastries wrapped in paper. Their laughter drifts like ribbons through the air. The puddles shimmer with the reflection of clouds, now turning white and slow. The world feels freshly written. You sip your coffee, now cool, and realize that even its bitterness has softened. Everything has settled into harmony. And then, quietly, you hear it again, the faint hum of the refrigerator, the sigh of cooling loaves, the breath of air through the tiny gap under the door. They sound like whispers, whispers of sugar and time, whispers that remind you that even silence has a heartbeat. You close your eyes. The warmth inside you glows steady, like a candle that has found its flame again. You think of the rain that came before, the storm that cleansed, the patience that followed, the sweetness that now lingers. All of it forms one continuous story, a rhythm older than words. And as your thoughts drift softly towards stillness, you imagine the world outside falling into quiet synchronization. The river flowing, the trees breathing, the stars turning above, moving at the same patient tempo. Everything unfolding with the same quiet grace as the baker's hand stirring sugar into light. The oven door clicks shut again, and the sound feels like a full stop written by the universe. But somewhere beyond it, you can already sense the next pause, the next breath, the next small miracle waiting to rise. Because in this place between sugar and silence, between warmth and waiting, time doesn't just pass. It whispers, and tonight, as you listen closely, it whispers your name too. Morning returns softly, like a page turning without sound. The world outside the bakery breathes in pale silver light. The puddles have become mirrors again, small reflections of a quiet sky. A faint breeze wanders through the street, carrying the scent of wet stone and rising bread. The bell above the bakery door trembles once its tiny sound feels like the heartbeat of a day being born. Inside, the air glows with calm purpose. Dust motes drift through beams of sunlight that cut across the counter, swirling lazily in invisible currents. You sit where you always do, at the wooden table near the window, watching the baker move through his quiet rituals. His motions are almost ceremonial, each scoop, each gesture, guided by habit and care. He reaches for the sack of flour. The way he lifts it slowly, reverently reminds you of someone handling a story that has been told for centuries. When he opens it, a soft cloud rises, drifting upward like breath made visible. You watch the particles shimmer in the light, thousands of tiny stars suspended in air. For a brief moment, the bakery becomes a galaxy of white dust and warmth. He doesn't speak, but you sense that flour has its own language, one that only hands and wind can understand. Every handful seems to listen to the room before it falls. The baker spreads it across the counter with a motion so gentle that it looks like he's calming the surface of water. You inhale deeply. There's something ancient in this sense, something both humble and eternal. Flour is simple, but it carries the story of transformation. Grain turned to powder, sunlight turned to sustenance, wind turned to whisper. Each grain once belonged to a field, to the earth that remembers every storm and season as the baker begins to knead. The sound of his palms pressing into dough fills the room with rhythm. It's a soft, repetitive music, the heartbeat of creation. You watch the dough stretch and fold, breathing under his touch. The movement feels alive, like the rising and falling of tides. You think of the science within erythroproteins aligning, the gluten forming a web that traps air. The dough grows elastic, ready to rise. But in this moment, it's not chemistry you feel, it's devotion. The baker looks up, his expression thoughtful. Flour listens to the wind, he murmurs. You tilt your head. What do you mean? He smiles faintly. It remembers where it came from. Every grain carries a little of the weather it was born in. You can taste it if you listen carefully. You don't fully understand, but something inside you does. You've felt it before, how certain foods taste like seasons, how a loaf can carry the spirit of a landscape. Perhaps science would explain it as minerals, soil composition, humidity. But here, the explanation doesn't matter. What matters is the connection, the way something as small as dust can carry the memory of the wind that once touched it. You reach out and brush your fingers lightly across the counter. The flour clings to your skin, fine and soft. Each grain feels like a fragment of time. You imagine the fields where it was born, golden plains rippling under summer wind, stalks bending in rhythm to an invisible song. You can almost hear it, the music of growth, the rustling chorus of life becoming nourishment. The baker kneads with slow persistence. His hands rise and fall in steady rhythm, pressing, folding, turning. You realize that this motion, this repetition, is another form of prayer. There's comfort in it, a kind of surrender. In science, repetition is precision. In life, it becomes peace. The dough sighs softly as he works, exhaling small pockets of air. The sound is tender, like the breath of someone sleeping. You close your eyes and listen. The world beyond the walls fades away, the street, the passing footsteps, even the ticking clock. What remains is the whisper of flour, the breath of wind, and the pulse of hands moving in time. You remember something you once read, that everything in the universe vibrates. Even the smallest particles, the quarks and electrons, hum with energy. Movement is existence. Stillness is only illusion. And here, in this quiet bakery, you feel that truth not as science, but as presence. Every atom around you seems to breathe, to listen, to belong. When the baker finally stops, the dough rests on the counter, smooth and shining. He covers it with a soft cloth. Now, he says, we wait. Waiting again. The invisible ingredient. You smile. You must do a lot of waiting. He chuckles. Yes, but waiting is when the magic happens. The air teaches the dough how to rise. He turns away to wash his hands, and you watch the covered bowl as though it's alive. Beneath the cloth, something quiet and miraculous is happening. He is consuming sugar, releasing tiny breaths of gas. The dough is learning to become more than it was. Slowly, invisibly, it expands. You think about how this process mirrors life itself. Growth often happens in stillness, in those in-between moments when nothing seems to move. The body heals in sleep. The mind deepens in silence. Even the universe, between bursts of creation, drifts in long intervals of rest. You begin to see that the bakery isn't just a place of work, it's a metaphor for existence. Outside, the wind stirs again, brushing through the open window. It lifts a faint dusting of flour from the counter, sending it swirling through sunlight. You follow its movement, entranced. The particles spin and dance, forming shapes that almost seem deliberate, like fleeting symbols written by the air itself. For a heartbeat, you feel that if you could just slow time enough, you might read the message hidden within. The wind writes in flour, the baker says suddenly, watching you watch it. But only for those who look closely. You nod, unable to reply. You understand now the world is always speaking. It just uses a language we forget how to hear. Flour and wind, scent and silence, texture and time. Science measures these things, but the heart feels them. The baker begins to prepare the oven. The door creaks open, and a wave of warmth rolls through the room. It smells faintly of yesterday's loaves, of stories already told. He slides in a tray of small rolls, their surfaces brushed with milk. These will speak in their own voices soon, he says softly. You watch him move, his every gesture blending art and precision. In the glow of the oven light, his face looks timeless, neither old nor young, but part of something ongoing, the kind of wisdom that doesn't belong to one person, but to humanity itself, the quiet, enduring wisdom of those who make. You rest your chin on your hands, letting the moment stretch. The steady tick of the clock joins the rhythm of the oven hum, forming a soft duet. Your thoughts wander back to the wind that shaped the grain, forward to the warmth that will soon feed others. It strikes you that creation is always a collaboration. Earth, air, fire, and time working together in patient harmony. You whisper to yourself, everything helps everything else. The baker hears you and smiles. Yes, that's the secret. You sit together in silence as the rolls begin to rise. The smell deepens, rich, buttery, full of promise. You close your eyes again, and it feels like floating. The scent is warmth itself, a gentle weight that settles in the heart. In your mind, you see the molecules dancing, the starches swelling, the proteins stretching. Science unfolds quietly beneath beauty, unseen but present. You imagine the carbon dioxide bubbles forming like tiny stars, the heat rearranging everything at the molecular level. Creation, you realize, is chemistry made sacred by patience. The baker checks the oven, then gestures toward the window. Look, he says. Outside, the wind has picked up, scattering small leaves along the wet street. They tumble and twist, caught in invisible spirals. You watch their motion, random yet rhythmic, chaotic yet full of pattern. The same dance that happens in the dough is happening out there too. The same physics, the same poetry. He continues softly, "The wind is a teacher. It moves without asking where it's going, but it always finds rhythm. You think of how air fills lungs, how breath becomes voice, how voice becomes song. Wind is not just movement, it's language. And flower, in its softness, listens. When the rolls are ready, the baker removes them gently, setting them on a rack to cool. The crusts gleam faintly golden, whispering as they settle. The sound is soft, but constant a series of tiny cracks and sighs as steam escapes. It sounds like the bread is speaking quietly to itself, remembering the journey from grain to loaf. You take one and break it open. Steam rises, fragrant and alive. You tear a piece and taste it. It's simple, but profound warm, pure, familiar. It tastes like patience, like air turned edible. You chew slowly, and each bite feels like grounding a connection between your body and everything that made this possible. Good. The baker asks. You nod. Perfect. He leans back, wiping his hands. The wind always knows how much the flour needs, he says with a wink. They talk when we're not listening. You laugh softly, but as you look around, the idea doesn't seem strange. The air in the bakery moves differently now, alive with faint motion. The flour on the counter shifts in tiny eddies. You think about the countless invisible forces always at work around you: air currents, temperature gradients, the pull of gravity, all weaving together to create the ordinary miracle of the moment. You feel deeply at peace. The bakery hums like a heartbeat. The world outside is bright but quiet, a harmony of wind and warmth. You realize that this chapter of the day, the rising, the resting, the breaking of bread is just another verse in the long poem of existence. You sip your tea and watch the flour dust still floating in the air. It drifts slowly downward, catching the light one last time before settling back onto the counter. The morning deepens into a soft amber glow. Time in the bakery moves differently now, like honey sliding down a glass jar, slow and viscous, catching the light as it passes. The air still carries the warmth of freshly baked bread, and the faint hum of the oven lingers. A background heartbeat too subtle to notice until you really listen. You sit quietly, your tea growing cool beside you, watching the baker move through the aftermath of creation. The loaves are cooling, the counter has been brushed clean, yet the air still vibrates faintly, as though some hidden rhythm continues beneath the silence. That's when you hear it, a soft tick, then another dot. It's not the wall clock, you've grown used to that sound. This one is deeper, almost buried. It seems to come from the floor, somewhere near the great iron oven. You tilt your head, listening. There it is again, steady, patient, ancient dot. The baker notices your curiosity and smiles knowingly. Ah, he says quietly, you've heard the clock beneath the oven. You blink, unsure if you misheard. There's a clock under there. He nods slowly, wiping his hands on a linen cloth. Yes, but not the kind that tells time. He kneels down, lifting a small hatch in the wooden floor. From beneath it rises a faint golden light, warm and flickering, like candle flames seen through honey. The ticking becomes clearer now, rhythmic pulse, slow and calm, like the heartbeat of something sleeping. You lean forward, drawn by the sound. The baker gestures for you to come closer. Inside the open hatch, you see years-old brass ones, turning with quiet precision. They are half covered in flour dust, their edges dulled by time, but they move in perfect harmony. The motion is mesmerizing. Each rotation feels deliberate, every click a whisper of memory. This clock, the baker says softly, wasn't built by hands. You glance at him, puzzled. Then who built it? He smiles faintly. Time itself. You stare at the gears again. There's something hypnotic about them. The way they turn seems almost alive, not mechanical, but organic, like the slow pulsing of a cell dividing, or the breathing of the earth. The old bakers used to say, he continues, that beneath every oven time gathers. The heat calls it. The rising and cooling, the waiting and waking, it's all rhythm. And rhythm attracts the clock. You're silent for a moment, absorbing his words. Do you mean the clock measures baking time? He chuckles softly. Not exactly. It measures patience. The idea settles in you like warmth spreading through cold hands. You look again at the slow-turning gears, their faint shimmer reflecting the oven light. Each tick feels like a heartbeat, steady, unwavering. He sits beside you, resting his elbows on his knees. Most people think baking is about ingredients, but it's mostly about waiting. The dough doesn't rise on command. The crust doesn't brown by will. The baker must move in rhythm with time, not against it. This clock reminds me of that. You glance up. Does it ever stop? He shakes his head. Never, but it does slow, sometimes on days when the world feels heavy. It listens to the weather, to our moods. Time isn't made of numbers, you see. It's made of attention. You let the words sink in. Attention. The idea feels weighty, yet freeing. Perhaps that's why the bakery feels so timeless, because here every action is done with complete presence. No rush, no distraction, just awareness, like a long inhale held between thoughts. You reach out, hesitant, and brush your fingertips against the edge of the hatch. The air there feels faintly warm, pulsing gently in rhythm with the ticking. You think of the clocks in science museums, the ones that count nanoseconds or synchronize with atomic pulses, but this feels different. This clock measures something unquantifiable. The rhythm of waiting, you murmur. The baker nods. Exactly. You can't measure that with seconds. He closes the hatch carefully, and the sound softens again, muted, but still present. The ticking blends into the ambient hum of the bakery until it becomes indistinguishable from silence. You find yourself thinking about how everything has its own kind of clock. Trees measure years by rings. The ocean keeps time in waves. The stars move in patterns too vast for human calendars. Even your breath, you realize, keeps its own rhythm, one that slows when you listen. The baker returns to his counter, humming a tune under his breath. The melody is simple, cyclical. It reminds you of the ticking clocks, something that repeats but never exactly the same way twice. You sip your tea again, now cold but still comforting. The sound of the rain outside begins to change from steady drizzle to a soft patter against the window pane. The world is slowing, aligning itself with the rhythm of this room. After a while, you ask, do you ever wonder what happens if the clock stops? He pauses, considering. If it did, he says, I think everything here would hold its breath. The loaves wouldn't rise, the wind wouldn't stir, even the dust would hang still in the air. But only until someone remembered to listen again. Because time, he adds, is drawn to attention like light to mirrors. You close your eyes, picturing it a frozen bakery suspended in golden stillness, every particle waiting to move again. It's both eerie and beautiful. When you open them, the baker is watching you, smiling gently. Do you know what the old stories said about the first clock? You shake your head. They said it wasn't built to measure hours. It was built to remind us that moments matter. That life isn't made of time, it's made of awareness. You let that thought rest in your mind. Outside, a gust of wind swirls past the window, scattering droplets of rain into tiny prisms. For a moment, the world seems made entirely of movement and pausage in perfect balance. The baker walks to the oven, opening its door slightly. The golden light spills out, painting his face in warm glow. Every loaf, he says, is a lesson in time. The moment you think it's ready, it asks for one more breath. And when you give it that breath, but becomes perfect. He closes the door again, and the room settles into silence once more. You listen to the muted ticking beneath the floor. It's comforting now, like a lullaby woven into the structure of the building itself. You realize you've been unconsciously matching your breathing to it. Inhale on the tick, exhale on the tock dot. The baker notices and chuckles softly. You've learned its rhythm already. You smile. It's hard not to. Good, he says. That means you're hearing what most people miss. He moves toward a shelf filled with small glass jars, each labeled with neat handwriting: sea salt, cardamom, star anise, lemon dust. He opens one and lets you inhale. The scent is bright, awakening. Spices, he says, are little clocks too. They tell time through aroma. Freshness fades, scent evolves, flavor deepens. Nothing stays still, not even sweetness. You nod slowly. It all feels interconnected. Now the gears beneath the oven, the heartbeat of the dough, the slow passage of rain outside. Everything ticking in harmony, guided by attention. He sprinkles a bit of spice into a bowl, stirring gently. Do you know, he says quietly, that the universe itself might be one great clock? You look up. You mean cosmologically? He smiles at the word. Perhaps. Some scientists say time began with a spark, the first movement, the first imbalance. And since then, it's been unwinding, rhythm after rhythm. Maybe we're just small echoes of that first tick. You think about that: the Big Bang as a heartbeat, space as an oven of creation, galaxies rising like dough, everything expanding, cooling, forming patterns. Even chaos has rhythm when seen from far enough away. And if the universe stops, you ask softly. He glances toward the floor, as if listening again to the hidden clock. Then maybe, he says, it's only waiting for someone to remember how to listen. You let the silence stretch between you. It feels sacred, somehow, this awareness of everything breathing in time. Minutes or perhaps hours pass. The rain stops, leaving behind a luminous stillness. The puddles outside catch the reflection of clouds drifting slowly overhead. The air smells clean, renewed. The baker sets another loaf into the oven, and as he does, the faint ticking beneath you grows slightly louder, as though acknowledging the act. You wonder if it's real, or if the rhythm now exists entirely inside you. He looks at you thoughtfully. You know, he says, every baker leaves a little of their heartbeat in what they make. The clock keeps it safe. Your eyes widen slightly. Their heartbeat, he nods. Yes, every need, every pause, every sigh, all becomes part of the rhythm. When I was an apprentice, my teacher told me to never rush the dough, or I'd break its pulse. That's when I learned the clock isn't just beneath the ovens, beneath us, inside us. You glance down, feeling the floor's warmth through your shoes. It's faint, but realer, living pulse connecting everything in this space. The baker continues. When people eat bread, they don't just taste grain and salt. They taste time itself captured in form. That's what gives it soul. You smile softly, realizing how true that feels. Every bite of bread, every sip of tea, every breath, it's all time transformed into experience. The clock ticks on, steady, endless. You think about how, in laboratories, scientists build atomic clocks that measure with unimaginable precision, yet none of them can capture what this one holds: the weight of patience, the warmth of stillness, the breath between moments. Maybe, you say quietly, we spend too much time measuring time and not enough living it. The baker nods. That's why this one hides. It doesn't want to be measured. It wants to be felt. In the quiet rhythm of the bakery, steam drifts upward, soft, shimmering, alive. Each curl of vapor becomes a whisper, a reminder of how warmth and breath shape the universe. You watch it rise like a thought dissolving into night air, a connection between bread and stars. Somewhere in that mist, you feel the pulse of creation itself. It begins with silence, not the absence of sound, but the kind of silence that holds a heartbeat, the hum before life stirs. The ovens glow, their amber light spilling across tiled walls. The scent of baked sugar lingers, soft and sweet, like a memory refusing to leave. You are standing by the window again, and the glass is fogged with breath. Outside, the rain still falls, slower now, heavier, as though even the sky has begun to tire. You notice it then, the steam. It rises in curls from a tray of bread left to cool. For a moment, it almost seems alive. The thin threads of vapor twist and shimmer in the golden light, each wisp moving like a thought-seeking form. And you realize this is what warmth looks like when it wants to leave. Steam is a traveler. It carries memory in its motion. Every molecule that escapes carries a story of water drawn from the soil, lifted through roots, folded into wheat, and released again through fire. The cycle completes itself in the hush of this small room. You are watching a world being remade in miniature. You close your eyes and breathe it in. The air feels thick, soft against your lungs, almost alive. It tastes faintly of salt and sweetness. You remember then that steam is not just heat, it is transformation. A moment where matter becomes motion, where stillness gives way to breath. In the bakery, this is ordinary, but beyond these walls, the same dance unfolds on a scale you can barely imagine, far above the ceiling. Beyond the clouds, beyond the cold edge of air, there is another kind of steam, the cosmic mist that once filled all of space. In the first seconds of existence, the universe was vapor, pure, glowing particles suspended in light. Hydrogen, helium, drifting like invisible flour in a cosmic kitchen. The stars were not yet born, but the recipe was already written. Energy waiting to knead matter into shape. The thought feels vast, almost too large for the smallness of this room. And yet, when you watch the steam rise from a loaf, curling into invisible sky, it feels the same. A mirror between the infinite and the intimate. A reminder that creation, whether of bread or galaxies, is always an act of warmth meeting emptiness. You move closer to the tray. The bread hums faintly as it cools, a sound that is more feeling than noise. You touch the crust with your fingertips. It's rough, warm, alive. The steam curls against your skin before vanishing into the air. You imagine each wisp as a spirit escaping its shell, freed to wander and join the greater cloud above. Somewhere inside you, a thought unfolds like dough rising. Maybe this is what all creation longs for, to rise, to breathe, to dissolve into something greater. The baker once told you that good bread listens, that you must knead it not by time, but by sound. Listen to its sighs, its whispers of air beneath the surface. You realize now that steam, too, speaks not in words, but in release. It's the sound of the universe exhaling, letting go of its heat. You think of your own breath, how every sigh carries water that was once part of oceans, clouds, stars. Every exhale a quiet offering back to the cycle that built you. You are made of the same vapor that once drifted between suns. When you breathe, the universe breathes through you. You lean against the counter, feeling the slow rhythm of your chest, the faint coolness of the tiles. The world seems to narrow into that single sensation, inhale, exhale, the faint shimmer of heat between them. In this rhythm, you find peace. It's not the rush of thought, but the lull of being. The same rhythm that steam follows as it rises, slow, deliberate, eternal in the dim corner of the bakery. Light filters through a vent in the ceiling. The beam catches the vapor, scattering it like stardust. Tiny droplets turn into galaxies, suspended just long enough for you to see them sparkle. You blink and they are gone, but the image lingers in your mind, a quiet proof that wonder is not only in the stars, but also in the breath between loaves. You remember something you once read, that stars are the universe's way of exhaling heat, that each one burns not to consume, but to balance, to share its warmth with the dark. You look at the ovens again and think, maybe the baker's fire is the same, a small, human echo of cosmic generosity, heat not to destroy, but to give. The rain outside has softened into mist. You can hear it whispering against the glass, the same sound as the steam, only colder. The air feels thick with life now, every molecule moving with quiet intent. You feel as though you're inside a thought that's still forming, something between dream and discovery. You walk toward the window. Your reflection stares back, blurred, shimmering through fog. Behind it, the street glows faintly from the lamps beyond the rain. You think of the first people who looked at mist and called it spirit. Perhaps they were right. Perhaps every cloud, every vapor rising from heat, is a small echo of something sacred. The smell of cinnamon and baked fruit fills the air, sweet and grounding. You realize how gentle the world can be when you allow it to slow. Every scent, every sound, every curl of steam feels deliberate, as if the universe is writing in invisible ink, and the bakery is the page. You stand still long enough to read its words. You remember how earlier you'd watched the baker move. The way he lifted the dough, folded it with care, whispered something under his breath. The rhythm of his hands matched the rhythm of your breathing now. It was almost ritual, the shaping of chaos into order, matter into meaning. And when the loaves went into the fire, it felt like a kind of offering, the same offering the universe made when it gave light to darkness. Steam curls upward from the tray again, fragile and glowing. It doesn't rush, it drifts. It reminds you of thoughts that come before sleep, gentle, half-formed, free, the kind of thoughts that don't need to be finished, the kind that simply exist, glowing softly in the space between day and dream. You think about how the bakery, in its warmth, is like a miniature cosmos. Fire as stars, dough as planets, steam as nebulae, each playing its part in an endless cycle. Birth, transformation, release. It's strange how the smallest moments can contain the largest truths. The clock ticks faintly in the background. The hands move with unhurried grace, like the turning of worlds. The sound blends with the whisper of steam, forming a rhythm, a heartbeat of time itself. You begin to wonder if every sound in the world is part of a hidden harmony, if every rising wisp of heat carries a note in the song of existence. Your eyes grow heavy. The warmth, the smell, the rhythm, it all feels like a lullaby. The kind written not in words, but in air. The kind you can only hear when everything else goes quiet. You lean your head against the cool window, and the fog beneath your breath forms new constellations. For a fleeting second, you think you see them move. The stars above, the steam below, both born from the same motion. Expansion, exhalation, the act of release. It comforts you, knowing that even the universe began with a breath. You think of the next morning, of how the bakery will fill again with people, voices, warmth. The steam will rise again, unnoticed by most. But now, for you, it will always be more. It will be the language of creation itself. A reminder that every act of warmth, from the sun, from fire, from the human heart, leaves a trace of light in the air. The oven hums softly, almost like a sigh. The rain outside fades into a low murmur, as if the world is finally resting. You close your eyes and listen. The sound of water meeting warmth, the pulse of atoms moving toward stillness, the whisper of steam, and in it, something eternal. It feels like the bakery is breathing with you, each rise of vapor matching your breath, each droplet of condensation glowing faintly before vanishing. You feel your heartbeat slow, your thoughts dissolve into haze. The world is reduced to warmth, scent, and silence. You could stay here forever, floating between the breath of bread and the sigh of stars. And somewhere in that silence, a question forms, delicate as mist. If every breath leaves light behind, then what remains when the breath ends? You don't answer. You simply watch as another curl of steam drifts upward, joining the unseen sky, and you follow it with your eyes until it disappears. Outside, the rain falls again, gentle, unhurried, as if tracing the world's forgotten stories. Each droplet holds a memory, carried through time, through cloud and ocean and tear. You listen to its rhythm, realizing that water never truly leaves. It only changes shape. Tonight, the rain speaks soft, ancient, endless, and you begin to understand its language. The world begins to hum before you even open your eyes. Not with sound, but with vibration, a faint trembling in the air, as if the night itself is breathing. Then you hear it, rain, soft, endless, deliberate, each drop a word, each word a reminder. You're still in the bakery, though the light has changed. The ovens are dark now, their fires resting. The air carries the faint echo of warmth, the ghost of sweetness. Outside, the window glistens with moving trails, tiny rivers racing toward the sill. The world beyond is wrapped in shadow, blurred into watercolor by the steady rain. You move closer to the glass. The cool surface presses against your fingertips, and for a moment, it feels like touching time itself, smooth, cold, flowing endlessly forward. Each droplet that strikes the pane becomes a pulse, a quiet heartbeat of the earth. The rain is ancient, older than mountains, older than the stars in your reflection. Every drop has lived 1,000 lives, fallen on the sea, risen with the sun, carried across skies, returned as tears, rivers, oceans again. You realize you're not just listening to rain, you're listening to memory. Outside, a streetlight glows through the mist, its circle of light trembling as droplets fall through it. In that glow, you see the story of the planet itself, written in motion. The journey of water is the story of return, always rising, always falling, always finding its way home. You take a breath, slow and deep. The air smells of rain and metal, of the earth reawakening. You remember learning once that every breath you take contains molecules that have passed through countless lungs of birds, of trees, of people long gone. The thought makes you feel both small and infinite. A droplet slides down the window, leaving a trail that catches the light. You watch it move, tracing its slow descent. For a moment, it seems to hesitate, suspended between gravity and resistance. Then, softly, it joins the others below. You realize there's something tender in its fall, something that feels like forgiveness. You close your eyes and listen. The rain becomes music, not in rhythm, but in mood. Each drop a note, each cluster a chord. The bakery walls seem to breathe with it, expanding and contracting like a lung. You let the sound fill you, wash over your thoughts, carry them away like small leaves down a stream. In this rhythm, you begin to understand something, that the rain does not simply fall, it returns. Every drop you hear is a traveler coming home. The same water that once cooled volcanic stone, that once fell on the first forests, that once touched the face of a sleeping child thousands of years ago, now it falls again, just outside your window. You imagine it, oceans rising into clouds, clouds drifting across continents, raindrops falling onto leaves, running into rivers, back to see an endless cycle of remembering. The water remembers every form it's taken. It remembers warmth and cold, height and depth, silence and song. You press your palm against the glass. The coolness seeps into your skin, grounding you. You think about your own body, how most of it is water, how much of what you are has traveled through centuries before becoming you. The rain outside is not separate. It's returning to itself, through you. In the corner of the bakery, the clock ticks, slow, steady, the same rhythm as the drops. You begin to feel the two merge, rain and time blending into one gentle motion. You think maybe time itself is just another form of rain, always falling, always moving, never lost. You remember something the baker said once, half asleep by the fire. Rain is the earth dreaming aloud. It felt poetic then. Now it feels true. The sound of rain is the planet whispering to itself, reminding its rivers to return, its forests to wake, its oceans to breathe. It is the soft pulse of continuity, the hush that tells all things they belong. You step away from the window and sit down near the door, where the scent of wet air seeps through the cracks. The floor beneath you feels cool and damp, and you can almost hear the earth drinking. The rhythm outside becomes slower, heavier. The storm is easing into calm, a lullaby reaching its final verse. You tilt your head back, letting your eyes follow the streaks of light that fall through the glass. Each drop catches the glow before vanishing. The simplicity of it all feels enormous. You realize that rain is both birth and memory, both ending and beginning. It falls to remind you that nothing truly leaves. It only changes form. You imagine the world without it, the silence that would follow, the dust, the stillness. Then you realize, maybe even that silence would remember rain. Maybe everything holds memory in its quietest spaces. The baker moves softly behind you, his steps muffled by the hum of weather. He doesn't speak, but you can sense his thoughts, heavy with calm. The kind that only comes from watching the same storm year after year. He pours you a cup of tea, steam curling upward like breath. It's the same steam you watched earlier, reborn again as warmth. You hold the cup, feeling its heat, knowing it's all part of the same endless circle. Outside, the rain lightens into drizzle. The world grows softer. The clouds hang low, like a blanket being pulled close. The street glows silver beneath the lamps. Every surface shines. You think of all the places this water has touched, the ancient seas, the hidden caves, the open sky. The whole world is connected through it, every drop a thread in a vast, glistening web. You sip your tea. The warmth moves through you, gentle and grounding. You think of how rain feeds rivers, rivers feed life, life exhales, and that breath becomes clouds again. You realize that the rain is not outside, it is within, flowing through you, resting in your veins, waiting to rise again someday. You close your eyes and picture it, the water in your body slowly lifting, someday joining the air, becoming part of the sky's memory. Maybe one day, a drop that was once part of you will fall again onto another window. In another night, in another quiet bakery, you smile at the thought. Nothing is lost. Nothing ever truly ends. The sound of the rain begins to fade. What's left is the gentle dripping from the roof, the sigh of wood as it dries, the steady ticking of the clock. You breathe with them, slow and even, your heartbeat sinking to their quiet rhythm. You think of the stars, how they to release what they hold, scattering elements across space. Hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, all born in the heart of fire, all drifting outward to form oceans, air, you. Maybe the rain remembers that too. Maybe that's why it feels sacred, because it carries the language of stars translated into water. A soft gust of wind presses against the windows, and for a moment you can hear the sky inhale. Then stillness. The rain has stopped. You open your eyes. The world is shining, washed clean. Drops cling to every edge of the glass, trembling before they fall. The silence that follows feels enormous, like the pause between heartbeats. You realize this is what peace sounds like, not the absence of motion, but the moment after completion. The baker begins to hum a tune, low, rhythmic, wordless. It blends with the faint dripping, forming a melody older than language. You listen, feeling your eyes grow heavy. Every sound tonight has carried you closer to stillness, and now even silence has weight, texture, warmth. You think of the rain one last time, its patience, its return, its memory. You wonder if maybe you, too, are like the rain, moving through forms, returning, remembering. The clock ticks once more. The air smells faintly of wet soil and cooling bread. You let your thoughts dissolve into that scent, that rhythm, that hush dot outside. A final droplet falls from the gutter, one small sound in an infinite cycle, and you realize, as your breath slows, that the rain never truly stops. It only becomes something else, something waiting for morning, something that remembers. Morning light returns in pieces, golden, soft, and unhurried. Crumbs scatter across the counter like quiet constellations of yesterday's sweetness. You realize that even in what's left behind, stories still whisper. Every crumb, every scent, every trace holds a message from the hands that made it, a language written in warmth and silence. The first light of dawn slips through the rain-washed glass, pale and golden. It moves gently across the bakery, gliding over flour-dusted counters and the slow curl of steam from a forgotten cup. Everything feels renewed, still glistening with the quiet weight of last night's rain. You stir awake to the faint sound of the baker moving, careful, deliberate, each motion a kind of prayer. He brushes flour from a wooden board, his hands tracing circles as though greeting an old friend. The air smells faintly of yeast and warmth, like comfort made tangible. Your eyes drift toward the table. Scattered across it are crumbs, tiny, imperfect, golden. They rest in clusters, as if forming secret patterns only the morning understands. The baker pauses to look at them, smiling softly, as if reading something. You wonder what he sees. He turns to you and says, barely above a whisper, even crumbs speak, if you listen long enough. You tilt your head, curious. Crumbs, speaking. But his tone isn't poetic. It's sincere. He continues, kneading the dough, his rhythm slow, calm, like a heartbeat you can hear in your bones. He explains, when I bake, I learn from what's left behind. The crumbs tell me about the bread, if it rose too quickly, if it rested well, if the oven burned too hot. They're messages from what has already become. You look back at the table. The crumbs are luminous in the soft light, casting tiny shadows. You think of stars scattered across the dark. Perhaps they too are remnants, pieces of what once burned bright, still telling the universe their story through silence. The baker hands you a small brush. Try it, he says gently. You begin to gather the crumbs, carefully sweeping them into a small pile. As you do, you notice their texture, some crisp, some soft, some glimmering faintly with sugar. Each one feels like a memory too small to forget. You realize that these are not remains, they are traces of creation. Evidence that warmth existed, that care took form, that something was shared, tasted, loved. You pause. It's strange, you whisper, how something so small can still hold meaning. The baker smiles. That's true for most things, he replies. Every detail remembers where it came from. You watch him fold the dough. The sound of his palms pressing it flat is soft, rhythmic, hypnotic. With each motion, flour rises like mist. The air seems alive with invisible stories of grain that grew in wind, of sun that warmed it, of rain that nourished it. The bread, like you, is made of the world. You think back to last night's rain, how it remembered oceans, skies, tears. And now here is the grain, remembering sunlight. The cycle continues, matter turning to memory, memory turning to matter again. The baker's hands move with patience older than language. Every gesture feels like communication, a kind of dialogue between him and the dough. You realize he doesn't need words. His movements are words. The sound of kneading becomes the grammar of care. The pause between each motion becomes punctuation. You close your eyes and listen. The air hums with quiet. The world outside the bakery begins to stir. Faint footsteps, distant carts, the echo of life resuming. But inside, time feels different, slow, intentional. The crumbs on the table shimmer in a beam of sunlight. You lean closer, imagining them as tiny letters, fragments of a story you're still learning to read. Maybe everything leaves behind its own alphabet. The way dust settles on a windowsill, the way footprints fade in snow, the way laughter lingers even after silence returns. You remember something you once read, that even atoms hold memory, that the carbon in your breath could have belonged to a tree, a whale, a distant ancestor. You are built from stories written in molecules. Perhaps the entire universe is a language of remnants. The baker sets the dough aside to rise and gestures toward the crumbs. "Taste one," he says simply. You hesitate, then pick up the smallest crumb between your fingers. It melts against your tongue, faintly sweet, soft, and warm. It tastes like the essence of bread, stripped to simplicity, like remembering a dream you once loved. You open your eyes, and the world feels wider. The crumb wasn't just flavor. It was memory condensed, a spark of all that came before it. Flour, water, time, fire, each one transformed, then surrendered, leaving behind a trace. You whisper, "So the crumbs are like fossils of flavor." The baker chuckles quietly. "Exactly," he says. "The fossils of warmth." He begins to hum as he cleans, the tune gentle and cyclical. It's the same song he always hums when he's waiting for bread to rise. A melody with no clear beginning or end, like the loop of creation itself. You watch his movements, the sweeping, the folding, the stillness. Even silence has rhythm here. You find yourself thinking about how the universe might hum in its own way. Vibrations of energy too slow or too vast for us to hear. Galaxies expanding, atoms trembling, time breathing. Maybe existence itself is a song, and we are the crumbs left vibrating within it. Outside, sunlight shifts again. The rain from the night before glitters on the cobblestones. Each reflection dances small galaxies of gold. The bakery smells alive again, rising with warmth as the ovens begin to glow. You take a slow breath, and for a moment, everything aligns. The scent of dough, the shimmer of crumbs, the hum of creation itself. You realize that what the baker said wasn't about bread at all. It was about attention, about the art of noticing what remains after the moment passes. You whisper, "Crumbs don't disappear. They return to the air, to the soil, to us." He nods. "Yes, even endings feed beginnings." You think about how stars end to collapsing into dust that becomes the foundation for new suns, new worlds. The universe itself speaks in crumbs of light scattered through eternity. You rest your hand on the table, feeling the warmth radiating from the wood. There's something grounding in this simplicity, in learning that even the smallest things hold meaning. You wonder how many moments in your life have fallen like crumbs, unnoticed yet sacred. A soft breeze enters through the open window, carrying the scent of wet earth. A few crumbs scatter, drifting into sunlight, weightless. You watch them fall, golden specks in the air, quiet constellations dissolving back into the world. The baker smiles. "Even they want to return," he murmurs. You watch them land gently on the floor. You imagine their journey swept away, maybe caught in the folds of air, maybe finding soil again. You realize that what's left behind is never lost. It becomes part of something larger. You close your eyes. The hum of the oven deepens, steady as a heartbeat. The scent of fresh bread thickens the air, rich and golden. Your thoughts begin to slow, your breathing deepens. You let your awareness expand beyond crumbs, beyond bread, beyond the bakery. You begin to see it, a vast cosmic table stretching beyond sight, where stars crumble into dust, and dust becomes worlds. Everything, even decay, is part of creation. You are both eater and eaten, maker and made. The baker touches your shoulder lightly. When you learn to read the crumbs, he says, you start to understand the universe. You smile, still half within that vision. And what do the crumbs say today? He looks at the golden specks gleaming in sunlight, then at the sky. They say the world remembers what we forget, that nothing we make ever truly fades. The air grows still again. The morning matures into brightness. The clock ticks softly, its rhythm blending with your slow breath. You feel the same peace that followed the rain, a deep, steady calm that hums beneath everything living. You glance at the crumbs one last time before the baker brushes them away. They scatter into the air, disappearing into light, and yet you know they haven't truly vanished. They've only become unseen. You take another breath, tasting sweetness still lingering on your tongue. Each exhale feels like translation of warmth into stillness, of life into rest, and as your thoughts drift, you begin to wonder if even crumbs hold meaning. What about the spaces between them? What stories does silence tell when we finally learn to listen? Not every story is told in words. Between the sounds of rain, between the breaths of bread rising, there is a hush, vast, steady, infinite. It is the pause that gives life its rhythm, the silence that speaks when everything else falls quiet. The morning lingers softly, as though afraid to disturb the air. The bakery is warm, filled with the faint hum of life, the ticking clock, the sigh of dough expanding, the whisper of your own breath. Yet beneath it all, there is something quieter still, a stillness so deep it feels alive. You notice it between the baker's movements in the spaces where no sound exists. His hands glide through the air, shaping the dough without rush. Every motion feels balanced by stillness, as if silence itself were his companion. Outside, the rain has stopped. The streets gleam with soft reflections, like memories sleeping in puddles. A cart rolls past, its wheels whispering through water. Then, again, stillness. You realize how sound always depends on silence, how one defines the other, how presence becomes known through absence. The baker places a tray of bread into the oven and closes the door gently. You hear the muffled whoosh of heat, the soft click of the latch, and then nothing. The silence deepens, not empty, but full. He looks at you with a quiet smile. You hear it too, don't you? You nod. It feels less like hearing and more like feeling. The silence hums behind your ribs, as though your heartbeat has begun to sync with something larger. The rhythm of the earth itself. The baker pours tea into 2 cups. The sound is soft, delicate, a thread of warmth weaving through the quiet. Most people fear silence, he says, handing you a cup. They fill it with noise, with motion, with words. But silence isn't absence. It's the space where meaning forms. You take a sip. The tea tastes of chamomile and light rain. You close your eyes, and for a moment, you simply listen. The silence holds everything. The echo of waves from distant shores. The low hum of atoms trembling in the air. The faint pulse of your own thoughts drifting by. It feels infinite. The baker sits across from you, his eyes half closed, breathing slow. The stillness between you stretches, not uncomfortable, not awkward, simply real. You feel how rare this is. 2 people sharing a silence that asks for nothing. You whisper, "It feels like the world is holding its breath." He nods. Exactly. Between every sound, there's a pause. Between every heartbeat, a rest. That's where life listens to itself. You let his words settle. You begin to notice silence everywhere, between words, between footsteps, between the soft crackle of bread in the oven. Even your thoughts begin to space out, drifting apart like clouds moving through sky. You think about sound, how it's made from vibration, how waves ripple through air. Without silence to hold them, sound would be chaos. Without rest, even music would lose its shape. You recall reading once that the universe itself hums, a cosmic background vibration from the birth of time. Scientists call it the cosmic microwave background, but even that hum exists within vast silence, a silence older than stars. You imagine floating in that silence, deep, endless, timeless. The kind of quiet where galaxies bloom like flowers and fade again. You feel small, but in a comforting way. You belong to something greater, a rhythm that breathes through everything. The baker breaks, the quiet with a gentle sound, the scrape of a chair, the slow opening of the oven. The smell of bread fills the room, golden and alive. It's a sound that feels earned, a sound born from silence. He sets the bread on the counter and simply watches it steam. The crust cracks gently, releasing warmth. You hear it, the faintest whisper, like a sigh of gratitude. The baker says, even the bread speaks softly when it's done. You smile. It's like it knows it's complete. He nods. Completion is quiet. Creation is loud, but fulfillment, that's silence. You think about that, about how beginnings rush and endings fade, how the universe started in an explosion and yet will likely end in silence, a slow cooling, a long exhale. Perhaps everything seeks stillness in the end. He cuts the bread. The sound of the knife slicing through crust is sharp, satisfying. Then silence again. The air smells like earth and home. You take a piece, feeling its warmth seep into your fingers. You eat slowly. Between each bite, you listen. The rain outside begins again, soft, uncertain. The rhythm of drops against the window becomes a lullaby. Between each drop, there is space, brief, tender, infinite. You find yourself whispering, even rain rests. The baker smiles. Everything does. Even light travels in waves, rising and falling. Even your breath pauses, just slightly, between inhale and exhale. That pause, that's the silence that keeps you alive. You feel your breath now, slow, even, patient. The pauses stretch, and within them you sense a calm so deep it feels ancient. The baker continues, voice low. When you knead dough, there's a moment when you stop. You wait, you let it rise. The dough breathes on its own, finding its form. You can't rush it. Silence is what lets it grow. You imagine that life as a kind of rising dough, needing stillness to expand. Growth not through constant doing, but through quiet being. You think of seeds sleeping in soil, of stars forming in the silence of nebulae, of minds finding clarity not through noise, but through rest. You glance around the bakery. Everything is still glowing softly. The shelves, the loaves, the steam curling upward like thoughts dissolving into air. You feel like you're inside a dream where time slows until it nearly stops. You whisper, maybe silence isn't the absence of sound. Maybe it's the presence of everything. The baker looks at you with quiet pride. You've begun to understand, he says. The clock ticks softly. The hands move, but you barely notice. It feels as though time itself has dissolved into calm. You remember moments in your own life when silence frightened you. Long nights, empty rooms, pauses in conversation that felt too heavy. But here, in the warmth of this place, silence feels different. It feels like listening, not to what is said, but to what is always there. The baker stands and opens the window. The rain's whisper grows louder, then softens again as wind carries it away. The scent of wet air fills the room, mingling with the smell of bread. You can almost taste tranquility. He says, there's a secret most people never learn. Silence isn't the opposite of sound. It's its foundation. Without it, nothing could speak, nothing could sing. You look at the world outside, the grey clouds, the rippling puddles, the faint shimmer of daylight. Every sound you hear now feels sacred. Every pause feels like a doorway. You take another slow breath, feeling your heartbeat align with the rhythm of the rain. You begin to understand how silence isn't just around you, it's in you. Between thoughts, between breaths, between the cells that make up your body. Even the spaces between atoms are filled with it. It's strange to think that everything you are, every movement, every heartbeat floats within vast oceans of silence. You are not separate from it. You are built from it. The baker whispers, the universe itself was born from silence. And one day it will return there. Not as loss, but as peace. You sit quietly, absorbing his words. The rain slows. The light shifts, turning soft gold. You feel a deep tenderness for everything, for the bread, the rain, the silence. The spaces within yourself you once feared. You realize how even conversation needs silence, how listening is as vital as speaking. You wonder if the universe is listening too, if every heartbeat, every raindrop, every whisper is part of a dialogue too vast for us to comprehend. The baker begins humming again, the same melody as before, circular and endless. It flows like water, dissolving into the quiet. You close your eyes. The hum fades, but its rhythm lingers, vibrating in your chest. You breathe in the scent of bread and rain. You breathe out the last fragments of thought. What remains is only awareness, clear, gentle, infinite. You whisper to yourself, the silence between whispers. That's where truth lives. Outside, a bird calls, brief and solitary. Then, silence once more. You feel as though the world has paused to listen with you. You realize that silence isn't something to escape. It's something to enter, to rest within, to be restored by dot. You take one final sip of tea. The warmth moves through you, slow and grounding. You set the cup down gently, and the sound it makes, that small, round note, feels like a promise. Dot. The baker meets your eyes. When you leave, he says, listen for what you cannot hear. That's where the world hides its secrets. You nod. The silence deepens. The light softens. The air hums with invisible calm. And in that stillness, between one heartbeat and the next, you begin to sense the next lesson rising, not in sound, not in motion, but in the quiet breath that carries everything forward. Light, gentle and infinite, carries stories older than stars. But even brightness must rest, must fold itself into shade. Tonight, you drift through the quiet balance between glow and darkness, where photons slow to whispers, and the night hums softly with their fading warmth. In this tender space, you learn what happens when light forgets its shadow. The dawn hasn't come yet, and the world is wrapped in a soft hush. You stand near the bakery window, where the rain has finally given way to mist. The sky is a pale gradient of blue and grey, as if the night is slowly learning how to let go. Inside, the embers in the oven still glow faintly, not flames, but memory. That faint orange shimmer fills the room like the last sigh of a star. You think of light, how it travels across the universe, never tiring, never stopping. Every ray that touches your skin might have been born billions of years ago, in the heart of some dying sun thrown across eternity to end up here. In this quiet morning, in this simple room, resting on your face, the baker notices your gaze and smiles. Light doesn't only illuminate, he says, softly, wiping his hands on his apron. It remembers. It carries everything it's ever touched. You imagine that photons, those tiny particles of light, moving endlessly through space, bouncing off planets, oceans, eyes, leaves, each one holding a record, a gentle trace of where it's been. Maybe the light on your hands once brushed against an ancient stone in Egypt or passed through the mist over a forgotten sea. You close your eyes and feel it, the warmth, the memory, the soft hum of energy. For a moment, it feels like you're glowing from within, like your body is made of sunlight that forgot to leave. But the baker's words linger. Light remembers. You wonder what happens to it when there's nowhere left to go, when it meets darkness so deep it can no longer move forward. The baker seems to sense your thought. He says, there are places in the universe where light disappears, places so heavy, so dense, that even brightness itself cannot escape. You nod. You've heard of them, black holes, the great silences of the cosmos, where light bends, stretches, and finally vanishes, not destroyed, but trapped in eternal stillness. It's strange to think of light, the symbol of everything, awake, alive, revealed, being caught by something invisible. And yet, that's the balance of existence, isn't it? Every glow has its shadow. Every sunrise has its dusk. You walk closer to the window, where morning tries to bloom but hesitates. The glass holds reflections, your face, the baker, the faint light from the oven, and behind them, darkness still clinging to the edges of the sky. The two worlds meet, brightness and shadow, not fighting, but merging softly. The baker says, without shadow, light would have no form. It needs contrast to be seen. Even the stars need darkness to shine. You think about that. How beauty isn't born from perfection, but from balance. The in-between spaces. How a candle's glow feels comforting because it sits inside darkness. How dawn feels magical because it rises from night. He continues, even inside your mind, light and shadow exist together. Your thoughts, your memories, they flicker like stars. Some bright, some dim, but all part of the same sky. You let his words settle, and in the silence that follows, you notice the world around you glowing in a subtle way, not from brightness, but from acceptance. The shadows under the table, the dim corners of the room, the reflections in cooling pans, all of them seem alive, holding the light gently rather than resisting it. The baker pulls open the oven door. Inside, a new batch of loaves glows golden, the crusts crackling softly. The light spills out like a sigh, then fades as he closes it again. You realize that even here, light must come and go, must rest between tasks, must surrender to shadow before rising again. He turns to you. You know, even stars die, he says. Some collapse, some fade. But before they do, they release everything, all their light, all their energy, back into the universe. They become part of everything that will ever shine again. You picture it, a supernova blooming like a silent flower in deep space. A burst of gold and violet spreading through the cosmic dark. From that explosion, new worlds form, new suns, new possibilities for warmth. It's beautiful, the idea that light never truly ends. It only changes its shape. The baker sets a small lantern on the counter and lights it. The flame flickers, small and uncertain, but the way it dances makes the room feel alive again. He watches it closely and murmurs, "Even this tiny flame has traveled from the sun, its heat, its spark, its memory. Everything is borrowed light." You feel that deeply. How the warmth in your chest, the glint in your eyes, the color of the dawn all trace back to that one ancient fire, the same fire that once blazed in stars long gone. The baker continues kneading dough, his hands slow, rhythmic, steady, as if following the motion of the planets. The dough glows faintly under the lantern's light. You notice the play of shadow across his fingers, the way movement gives form to both light and dark. He says, "The shadow isn't an enemy. It's what allows light to rest. Without it, the world would be blind." You think of all the times you've chased light, happiness, answers, understanding, as if darkness meant failure. But maybe shadow isn't emptiness. Maybe it's where the next idea, the next peace, the next dawn is born. You close your eyes and let the flicker of the lantern imprint behind your lids. You see soft colors, orange, blue, violet, and then, slowly, black. But even in the black, something remains, a faint glow, an afterimage. That's how memory works too, you realize. Even when moments fade, they leave warmth behind. Even when someone's gone, their light hums softly in your mind. You whisper, "Light never really leaves us." The baker looks up and nods. "It only changes where it lives," he says. He points to the window. The mist outside begins to thin, and the faintest glimmer of dawn peeks through the clouds. It's not bright, more like a sigh of silver, spreading slowly. Gently dot, you watch as it brushes the rooftops, as if the world is being painted awake. In the soft gold, you see both things clearly, the light and its shadow, holding hands. You understand now, when light forgets its shadow, it forgets itself. Without the contrast, without the rest, it burns too quickly, just as a person burns out when they forget to pause. You breathe deeply, letting the balance fill you, light and dark, warmth and rest, effort and stillness. Each one needs the other to be whole. The baker says softly, "The sun will rise, and then it will set, but its warmth will remain here, in the loaves, in the air, in us." You smile. "Even in the dark." He nods. "Especially in the dark." The room grows lighter as morning stretches awake. Dust motes drift like lazy stars through the beams of light. You can almost hear them hum. You think of the universe again, how even in its blackest spaces, there is always a shimmer, a remnant of creation. You whisper, "The universe is never truly dark." The baker glances at you. "No, it's just resting between bursts of light." You stay by the window a little longer, watching the balance unfold, shadow retreating but never gone, light expanding but never too bright. You feel the lesson settle deep in you, as gentle and grounding as the scent of bread. Light and shadow, both part of the same breath, the same rhythm, the same truth, and as the morning finally breaks, you feel your own glow returning, quiet, steady, balanced. The baker begins to hum again, a soft, a circular tune that sounds like sunrise itself. You close your eyes and listen, feeling the hum merge with your heartbeat, feeling the world exhale around you. Somewhere deep inside, you sense the next mystery stirring, the whisper of energy that never dies, but only changes form. The silence grows golden. You breathe once more, and in that moment, You understand the beauty of existence is not in brightness alone, but in the dance between light and the shadow it leaves behind. Time, like dough, stretches and folds in unseen hands. You move through its gentle spirals tonight, where moments rise and fall like tides of breath. There is no rush here, only rhythm, only the pulse of memory. You begin to see. Time is not a line, but a circle that softly hums. The rain has returned, but softer now, not a storm, not a song, just a whisper against the bakery roof. Each drop seems to mark a heartbeat, a rhythm the universe keeps just for itself. The bakery is quieter than ever. The lantern's flame sways gently, casting long shadows that seem to move slower than before. Even the clock on the wall ticks softly, as if time itself has grown drowsy. You sit at the wooden table near the oven, hands wrapped around a mug of tea. The steam rises in slow, curling ribbons, and for a moment it feels like you're watching time take shape, visible, soft, fragile. The baker enters quietly. He doesn't rush, doesn't hurry. His steps are as slow as the rain. He sits across from you, folds his hands, and says, "You've noticed it too, haven't you? How time slows here." You nod. The bakery feels like it exists outside of ours. A place where clocks tick, but don't command. Where mornings and nights blur together in the rhythm of kneading, rising, baking. The baker smiles faintly. Time isn't what you think it is, he says. It doesn't move forward or backward. It folds, it breathes, it rises and falls like dough. He takes a ball of dough from a covered bowl, sets it on the table, and begins to knead. You watch his hands, the gentle push, the fold, the turn, the press. The pattern repeats endlessly, each motion connected to the last. "See," he says softly. You stretch it, then fold it back. You give it time to rest, then you return. That's what time does too. It isn't linear. It circles back on itself, always learning, always remembering. You watch the dough rise under his touch. It feels alive, responding to warmth, breathing with invisible air. Somehow, it mirrors the rhythm of your thoughts. You say quietly, "So, the past isn't gone." He shakes his head. "No, nothing ever really leaves. Moments, like memories, are still there, folded deep into the layers of time. You can't see them, but you can feel them." The sound of rain deepens, 1,000 soft fingers tapping on the roof. Each drop feels like a small echo of something ancient, something remembered. You sip your tea and feel warmth move through you, the same way it moved through countless people before you. That warmth, like time, isn't new. It's a continuation, the baker says. Think about bread. You take grain, something from the earth, you grind it, mix it, let it rise. Then it becomes something new. But even then, every crumb holds the memory of what it once was. He pauses and smiles. That's how time works. Every moment you live contains traces of every moment before. You lean back, eyes half closed. The thought makes your body relax, as if time isn't something chasing you anymore, but something holding you, gently, like soft fabric. The baker glances at the clock. It's ticking a steady heartbeat in the quiet room. "Did you know," he says, "that in physics, time isn't as rigid as we think? Einstein showed that time bends. It stretches near gravity, slows near light. You look up, imagining time like a ribbon, rippling and folding across the cosmos. In your mind, you see galaxies curving that invisible fabric, as if the universe itself breathes in slow motion." The baker continues, "Maybe that's why we feel moments differently. Some pass like a breath, others stretch like an eternity. It's not the clock that changes, it's our hearts. You nod, you've felt that before. How time seems to vanish when you're lost in wonder, and drag endlessly when you're waiting for something to end. It's as if emotion is the true clock, not the ticking hands. He smiles again, reading your thought. Yes, feelings bend time just as gravity bends light. That's why the most important moments don't fit on calendars. Outside, the rain slows even more, each drop distinct now, each one finding its place in the silence. You watch the baker continue his slow work. He sprinkles flour like stardust, folds the dough like a soft cloud, and the sound of his movements blends with the rhythm of the world. It feels as though you're inside a living heartbeat, one that belongs to both the earth and the stars. You close your eyes and feel your breath match it. Inhale, stretch. Exhale, fold. Rise. Rest. Time, you realize, feels like breathing. Each inhale brings the present alive. Each exhale releases the past into stillness. But both are part of the same endless rhythm. The baker begins to hum again, the same gentle tune you've heard many times before. But tonight, you notice something new. The melody seems to circle back on itself, each verse meeting the first, like a loop that never truly ends. He says softly, everything we do echoes in time. Every kindness, every word, it ripples through the folds, and one day returns to us, a little softer, a little wiser. You let that thought settle. You imagine your past selves, the child, the dreamer, the wanderer, all sitting quietly. Beside you now, each one part of the same circle, each one still alive in the folds of your being. You whisper, so the future is already here too. The baker's eyes glint. In a way, yes. The future is the dough still rising. You can't see it yet, but it's already forming. Every choice you make gives it shape. You smile faintly. That idea feels comforting, that even the unknown is part of something familiar, that nothing is ever truly lost, only transformed. He points toward the window. The rain has stopped completely. Drops clung to the glass, catching faint reflections of light from the street. Each drop trembles slightly, and for a moment they look like tiny worlds suspended in time. You imagine that each raindrop holding its own timeline, its own miniature version of past, present, future, falling, landing, evaporating, only to return again as mist, as cloud, as rain. Time, you realize, does the same. It cycles through forms, memory, moment, possibility, but it never ends. The baker rises, stretches his back, and places the shaped loaves near the oven. They'll rise slowly, he says, but not all at the same pace. Some need more warmth, some more rest, just like us. You watch the bread slowly expand, its surface stretching in delicate patterns. You can almost hear it breathe, and for the first time, you don't feel bound by time. You feel part of it, like a note in an endless song. You whisper, we are time, aren't we? The baker smiles, yes, and time is bread. Always rising, always becoming. He sets the timer, but doesn't wind the clock. Sometimes, he says, the best way to understand time is to stop counting it. You let the silence return. It feels sacred, vast, but kind. You can sense everything within it. The seconds, the ages, the gentle hum of existence. Your eyelids grow heavy. The hum of the oven, the faint patter outside, the warmth of the air all blend into one soft rhythm. The baker's voice drifts like mist when time folds. All things meet, the first light, the last thought, the spark that began it all. Every breath is a bridge between then and now. You feel yourself drifting, caught in the circle, weightless inside the quiet spin of the world. In the darkness behind your eyes, you see ripples of gold and silver like light seen through water. And in those ripples, faces, memories, stars, all turning slowly in one great endless spiral. You realize then, time isn't something to hold or chase. It's something to dance with. Something that waits patiently for you to breathe in sync. You breathe again. Inhale the scent of bread and rain. Exhale the sound of silence. The baker's voice fades to a whisper. Tomorrow will come when it's ready. Tonight belongs to stillness. Let time rest inside you. The lantern flickers once, then steadies a small sun, holding its shape against the dark. You watch it until the edges blur, until everything feels folded, moment into moment, dream into memory. And as sleep finally finds you, you hear the faint ticking of the clock, not counting seconds, but breathing softly, as if it too understands that time has no edge, only motion. Morning returns like a slow breath through the clouds. The bakery glows in the quiet hush after rain, and you sense that endings are never endings, only the soft exhale after creation. The final loaf rises in the oven, carrying all that has been learned, patience, warmth, and the light that never leaves. The world outside is washed clean. The streets shimmer with puddles that hold fragments of dawn, small mirrors of gold and blue. Mist drifts low, curling like the last sigh of a dream. Inside the bakery, everything hums gently. A familiar rhythm of comfort and quiet anticipation. You stand by the window, watching the day unfold. The clouds part slowly, revealing the pale light of early morning. It's not bright yet, but soft. A light that doesn't demand attention, only offers its quiet presence. The baker is already at the counter. He moves with calm precision, his hands steady, his gestures unhurried. Today, he is working on one final loaf, a small one, round and pale. Its dough smooth as moonlight. You ask softly, why just one? He smiles, his eyes reflecting the soft gleam of the lantern. Because this one isn't for selling, he says. It's for remembering. The words settle into the air like flour, dust, weightless. Yet lingering, did you watch him sprinkle a little flour over the dough, then trace a delicate spiral on its surface with his fingertip? The pattern feels familiar, like the spiral of a shell, the swirl of galaxies, the turning of time itself. He says quietly, this loaf carries the stories of all the others. Every bit of warmth, every crumb of patience, folded and baked into one small circle. You sit down and rest your hands on the wooden table, the same table where this journey began, where the first loaf rose, where the first storm passed. The air smells like everything that has happened here. Rain and flour, cinnamon and silence, dawn and memory. The baker hums softly while he works. It's the same tune you've heard through every season, but now you hear it differently, not as repetition, but as return. It feels like the song of a life folding in on itself, becoming complete. The dough rests near the oven, and the baker lights the flame. It glows softly, painting the walls in gold. You notice how the light seems alive, how it flickers like it remembers. Every spark feels like the echo of something ancient, something that once burned in the stars. The baker turns to you. Do you know what happens when you bake bread? He asks. Inside the dough, the yeast breathes one last time. It gives all it has, its warmth, its air, and in return, the loaf becomes something whole. He looks at the oven door, eyes soft. That's what life does too. We rise, we warm, we give, and then we become something new. You feel that truth settled deep within you. The quiet in the room feels sacred, like the pause between heartbeats. You realize this isn't just about bread. It's about every ending, every moment of release, every breath that leads to stillness. The baker pours you a cup of tea. Steam curls upward, rising slowly in the same gentle spiral he traced on the loaf. It's as if everything here moves to the same rhythm, the rhythm of becoming. He sits beside you, the sound of the oven soft and steady in the background. After a long silence, he says, "When the rain came yesterday, I thought the roof might give. But it didn't. It held, because it had weathered many rains before." He takes a slow sip of tea. That's how we hold too. We don't resist the storm. We learn to bend, to soften, to let it wash through us. Outside, a bird begins to sing. Its voice is small but clear, threading through the morning air like a silver thread, stitching the world back together. You close your eyes and listen. The sound mingles with the low hum of the oven, the soft clinking of the teacup, the rhythmic breathing of the baker beside you. The world feels whole. Not perfect, not still, but complete. The baker rises and opens the oven door. A wave of warmth spills out, golden and fragrant. The loaf inside glows softly, its surface cracked with delicate lines, like tiny maps of everything that has ever happened. He removes it carefully and sets it on the table. You watch as steam rises from it, curling and twisting into invisible shapes. In that small cloud, you imagine the rain that fell, the wheat that grew, the hands that worked the soil, the stars that once gave light to the earth. Everything connected, everything returning. The baker breaks the bread in half. The sound, that soft, crisp sigh, fills the air like a whisper. He offers you a piece. It's warm, almost alive. You take a bite and taste everything at once. The sweetness of memory, the salt of tears, the quiet joy of patience. He watches you, smiling. Every loaf, he says, is a story of transformation. Every crumb, a small proof that even the smallest change holds meaning. You nod. You think about all the moments that led here. The first storm, the laughter, the silence, the smell of sugar and fire. All of it rising into this single morning. The baker leans back, his hands resting in his lap. He looks older now, but peaceful. "Do you remember," he says, "when you first came here? You asked what makes this place special." You nod, remembering. He smiles softly. "It was never the recipes. It's the waiting. It's the letting time do what it must. You let the warmth of that truth settle into you. You can feel it, the same patience, the same trust, spreading through your chest like quiet sunlight." He stands and opens the bakery door. Cool morning air drifts in, carrying the scent of wet earth and rising light. For the first time, you realize the rain has ended completely. Outside, puddles glimmer like scattered mirrors, each reflecting a small piece of the sky. You step closer, and in one, you see your reflection, soft, calm, present. The baker says behind you. The storm never leaves without teaching something. You smile faintly. Its true storms soften us, make room for light to enter. You look up, and a beam of sun touches your face. A warmth that feels like understanding. The baker watches you quietly. Then, with a soft laugh, he says, "You know, this might be my last loaf." You turn to him. "Why?" he shrugs, still smiling. "Because some stories finish themselves. You don't always need to keep baking. Sometimes you just need to taste. You understand. This isn't an end, it's a rest. Like dough before rising again." You stand together at the doorway, watching the sun lift slowly through the clouds. The bakery behind you glows golden. Flour dust in the air, catching the light like tiny stars. It feels like the world itself is exhaling. Every sound, every smell, every motion belongs to this one shared breath. The baker says softly, "When the night comes again, you'll hear the rain, and maybe you'll remember the warmth." You nod. You will dot you step outside. The world feels fresh, familiar, infinite. Each puddle reflects a piece of sky. Each sound carries a note of peace. Behind you, the baker closes the door gently. The lantern inside flickers once more, a final shimmer of gold in the quiet room. You stand there for a moment longer, listening to the distant hum of life returning. Then you turn toward the road, your steps slow and sure. The scent of warm bread still following you, like a memory that doesn't fade. As you walk, the wind moves through the leaves, soft, rhythmic, a lullaby for the day just beginning. You realize that every ending is also a rising. Every silence, a form of music. You breathe deeply. The morning feels infinite, a quiet promise that everything continues. Everything transforms, everything rises again, and somewhere behind you, in that little bakery, a single loaf of light cools slowly on the table. Its warmth filling the air, a final gift to the dawn.